Hello to the friends in front of the broadcast. Welcome back to our channel. Today is the second day of the International Covenants Committee third visit to Taiwan to attend the review meeting of the ROC's third report under the ICCPR and ICESER. So firstly, let's talk about an universal value, which is the human rights that everyone have. The United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on December 10th, 1948. And in order to implement they adopted the International Covenant on Civil and Political and Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights on December 16, 1966, also known as the Two Covenants. According to the official data, the two covenants have so far exceeded the total number of countries, which is 195 countries all around the world, and the number of UN member states, 192 countries, by more than 80%. They are now the most important human rights protection standards in the international community and have become universally followed human rights norms. In order to improve Taiwan's human rights standards, integrate with international human rights, and expand mutual assistance and cooperation with the international community, thereby enhancing Taiwan's international human rights status, the Taiwanese government finally began to implement the two covenants on December 10th, 2009. However, since Taiwan has implemented the two covenants for more than 10 years, human rights persecutions continue to emerge one after another. Ironically, during the implementation of the two covenants, the number of enforcement cases of tax arrears and fees in Taiwan increased sharply year by year, from 1.9 million in 2001 to an exaggerated 14.31 million in 2020, which means 1 out of 2 people in Taiwan are now suffering from the abuse of public power. It not only deprives people of their property rights, but also seriously violates their most basic right to live. Many people's lives are threatened under these loopholes in the legal and tax system. So right now, we want to share a serious human rights issue that happens in Taiwan. Claire, do you have anything to share with the friends in front of our broadcast?
Okay, thank you. So as a democratic country, Taiwanese people are proud of the liberty we have and the human rights we own. However, in reality, there are many people being enslaved by the illegal tax officials. So the officials in Taiwan ask the taxpayers to pay the taxes that they didn't belong to them. And what's more, they would illegally auction off people's property. So as we can see in these 2 days, there were online meetings which reviewed Taiwan's implementation of the ICCPR and ICESCR. Many people in the meeting pointed out only one thing. What people really need is the true improvement of human rights rather than only for the window dressing of the laws. So one of the landmark cases of human rights violation is the Tai Ji Men case. The Tai Ji Men case was listed by Control Yuan as the landmark case of human rights violations by the government. And hundreds of experts and scholars, domestic and internationally, voiced their support for Tai Ji Men. So before we start to point out what is going on with this case, the Tai Ji Men case, let's briefly just introduce to all of you what kind of organization Tai Ji Men is. So Tai Ji Men is an ancient empire of Qigong, martial arts, and self-cultivation. And it is organized as an international non-profit cultural and spiritual organization. And the culture of Tai Ji Men is deeply rooted in the Tao wisdom, and this is very famous in the Chinese culture. So in response to a calling to bring both physically and spiritual health to the modern society, the contemporary Zongmenren of Tai Ji Men, and which is Dr. Hong Daozi, also called by all the Tai Ji Men dizi, shifu, established Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy in 1966. and successively founded academies in both Taiwan and the United States. So it is actually an international organization. However, on December 19th, 1996, the Taiwanese government officials carried out a politically motivated crackdown on various religious movements. Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren led hundreds of armed police officers on an unwarranted search of Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy branches and charged the defendants with both fraud and tax evasions. And the case was then forwarded to the National Tax Bureau, and the National Tax Bureau issued tax bills for the illegal tax evasions. Also, the National Tax Bureau did not carry out the investigation required by its statutory duty. And the National Taxation Bureau also, they didn't waited for the decision of the criminal court to ascertain the nature of the income. And even though all of the unlawful and the lack of the law, it still issued heavy tax penalties for Tai Ji Men for tax evasion for year 1991 to 1996, and it is simply based on the indictment. So to no one's surprise, the case is just robbed and it's not in any sense. So the Tai Ji Men case was confirmed innocent and with no crimes committed. And also it is confirmed for no tax evasions and no violations of tax code by the Supreme Court in 2007. However, after 26 years, the tax bill of the Tai Ji Men case is still exists. So why did this happen, and what did the Tai Ji Men dizi go through in the last 26 years? So this in the 26 years, it happens a lot of things, and it is not easy to just introduce only through our voice. So let's watch the video about the case, which we can go through the whole 26 years.
检察官用你的眼神就可以判断是不是要起诉你的话，那我们台湾就永无宁日。
赠与殉职，这方面也是。我想这个法院的判决证明了一件事情，就是真相只有一个。好，太基本是清清白白，真金不怕火炼。
That day, I witnessed a scene that was only possible from a movie. Watching the inspectors rush in with ammunition, we all froze. In the loud scolding like in slow motion, though no one opened fire, the camera flashed in front of my eyes felt like continuous gunfire, so dazzling and unreal. Frowning, squinting, there were many doubts in my heart, but looking at the detained people and objects, my body started to shake uncontrollably. This must be a dream, a nightmare. Tears blurred my vision. I squeezed my arm only to find that this was a reality, more terrifying than a nightmare. I needed to wake up, needed someone to tell me what happened. This is just a nightmare after all. On December 19, 1996, Prosecutor Hou Kuan-ren, in the name of a religious crackdown, searched 12 Tai Ji Men academies with 19 troops, accompanied by major media outlets, as if he wanted to paint a heroic image under the spotlight, rather than to pursue the truth. Later, he filed an extremely outrageous indictment against the Jiangmen of Tai Ji Men, fabricated crimes of fraud, abused the power of authority, forced coercion to obtain confessions, and forged documents.
就很生气，杠那两个唱歌怎么？他说：“你没吃，你念什么修什么？一点慈悲心都没有。 你的家里人你太太被关了，你还不赶快救他。
The whole process severely damaged the people's trust in the judicial system. With the media's lavish reports and ridiculous exaggeration, suddenly the Tai Ji Men dizi fell victim to this political purge.
我被陌生的男生把我的肩膀一拉，你怎么还敢穿这种衣服？你们太极门怎么样？就开始这样子对着我就吼。
It is obvious that Ho Guanren tried to exterminate Tai Ji Men, and the plan was working. The innocent and kindness of the group were erased overnight, leaving the pure white uniforms cast in shadow. Thousands of families were victimized, and the harm endured was not explainable with words. Tai Ji Men has been innocent from the beginning. Many Tai Ji Men dizi cry injustice as Tai Ji Men has suffered unjustified cases of extermination for no reason. It is the Zhangmen of Tai Ji Men Academy and his wife who suffer the most, but they and their disciples have never given up on defending their innocence. After many efforts, the criminal case was finally determined by the Supreme Court of Taiwan in 2007. Tai Ji Men was not guilty and had no tax evasion. The Supreme Court also confirmed the nature of the Jing Shi Li as gifts, and there was no taxation problem. All innocent defendants received national compensation, further proving that this case was a false case from the beginning.
拿到这个原有赔偿金呢，对于他们来说呢，其实已经是迟来的正义了。他们这10年、20年当中啊，受到很多的冤屈啊，那甚至于很多是妻离子散、家破人亡。
A few short sentences, less than 30 seconds, but behind it was a long 10 years and 7 months. The criminal court summoned about 200 witnesses, 58 courts, and took a total of 9,570 minutes. Every minute, every second carries with it countless blood, tears, and grievances. Finally, the belated justice of the innocents from the criminal case was ushered, but the taxation derived from the criminal case did not end as it should have. Due to the corruption of the NTB and the administrative court, a whole new round of nightmares began.
经过最高行政法院的判决确定，都已经认定太极门不是补习班，净司礼都是赠予的弟子的净司礼，不是补习班学费，所以太极门根本就没有税单，也没有纳税的问题。
刑事罪定验明，也就是起诉是完全不实，也就是说你完全没有举证，在完全没有举证之下所核发的税单当然是无效的，他应该要主动的来进行。
But not only was the tax bill not revoked, the Administrative Enforcement Agency of the Ministry of Justice, Xinzhou Branch, also enforced the auction of Tai Ji Men's land in Miaoli Mountain. It is intolerable. We have been bullied for too long, so we decided to put on our headscarves, protest on the streets, clench our fists. We roared. What did we do wrong? This roar has lasted for 25 years. 25 years! 9,125 days, a quarter of a century. How many people have dedicated the best time in their lives for this? They were youth, filled with righteous indignation. Now they are gray-haired human rights fighters. They were young and beautiful women. Now they hold the hands of their children while protesting on the street. They were cheerful and innocent children. Now they stand on the front lines speaking through the microphone. They were even allies who could not resist the passage of time, who passed away before justice arrived. In this violent storm, he no longer has another existence like a parallel universe. All because of Zhang Ren's great spirit, he waved his sleeves and said, "We still have to be patriotic. Because we love this land, we have to fight." So we dried our tears and continued to roar, but this time the scene was different. We are promoting Chinese martial arts with traditional weapons and feather fans to show the beauty and essence of the culture. In front of the president's office where we were protesting, we are now celebrating the nation's birthday. We were invited 10 times to perform at the national birthday celebration, and 8 times we performed on Ketagalan Boulevard. We did an important opening at the 2017 Universiade. He won the martial arts championship in Japan and performed at the Sydney Opera House during the Olympics to promote love and peace. The group has traveled across 5 continents to countless countries to promote the importance of conscience. In our homeland, we protest on the streets, but in the United Nations, we receive countless compliments. It was not that there was no pain, tears never stopped flowing. Because we care, we endure the sorrow. Because of faith, we bear the humiliation. This is all because we hope to show our smiles. Our hometown is surrounded by the sea, and the persecution put us in a situation like that of an isolated island. Fortunately, when we reached out for help, what we got was assistance from outside the island. Because of how absurd the case is, it has received a lot of attention by the international community that values human rights. Professor Kenneth Jacobson, the former advisor to the US President Clinton, who has been following the case for a long time, published an article after studying the case and said that the prosecutor's way of handling the case is so absurd that his mental health is questionable.
The mere statement of that would cause individuals and should cause individuals to question the sanity of the prosecutor.
Dr. Massimo Intravine, the Italian founder of the Research for New Religions and Belief, which helps those suffering from religious persecution, mentioned this is not a domestic or technical tax case, but a human rights case based on freedom of religion or belief. He also stressed that there's no time limitation to fight against human rights persecution, and that the international community has the responsibility to help resolve this case together. In San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Los Angeles, Honolulu, and New York, we have been protesting in front of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office. In December 2021, we went to the political center of the world, Washington, D.C., to petition in front of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Representative Office. Those who walked or drove by expressed their support by honking or thumbing up, and some even joined us in holding protest posters. We have visited many scholars and experts in many countries and talked about the case. They all expressed shock and inconceivability. Their support shows us that we are not alone on this road of seeking justice, that we are not helplessly isolated. We only hope the Taiwanese authorities will open their eyes and not trap themselves due to their inactions. On September 19, 2020, a group of volunteers from the Legal and Tax Reform League was holding posters at a crossroads in Hsinchu when all of a sudden a big group of police officers showed up questioning the volunteers. The atmosphere then was very tense, and the police officers started to shout at the volunteers. During the chaos, an officer forcefully stuffed a sign into the hands of one of the volunteers, Ms. Huang. The officer accused her of criminal behavior and handcuffed her without explaining why. Without knowing what crime she has committed, Ms. Huang was taken to Liujia police station, then transferred to the district prosecutor's office overnight. An innocent volunteer was tortured for almost 8 hours. After she was released by the prosecutor's office, she felt dizzy and was sent to a hospital. She was later diagnosed with acute stress disorder. The next day, the precinct chief of Zhubei Xinzhu County Police Bureau held a press conference trying to discredit Ms. Huang. He smeared an unarmed elderly volunteer as a criminal, lying about the truth of the incident, which is very similar to the process of the Tai Ji Men tax case 25 years ago. First detaining and intimidating innocent people, then publicly denouncing the innocent in front of the media. For us who have been persecuted for 25 years, it is like sprinkling salt on our wounds, adding fuel to the fire. We thought this would have happened in a totalitarian state, but it unbelievably happened to us, at a place we know so well, in a so-called democratic country. But even so, we are not giving up, because we love our country, because we want it to become a better place. For 25 years, we have not been afraid. No matter how hard the rain falls, how hot the blazing sun shines, the raging fire in our hearts will never be extinguished.
What ignites the fire is the anger from being mistreated. What ignites the fire is the pain the taxation victims suffered. What ignites the fire is the perseverance to pursue justice. Even if there is more injustice, more pain, we will still roar. As long as the case is not resolved, we will not give up. We will continue to move forward. If the fabricated Tai Ji Men tax case is not redressed, the raging fire will never be extinguished.
我们现场看一下阿 Sir 们，大家辛苦了，多少位？我刚刚稍微算了一下，超过30位。我们都是和平理性，我们也尊重阿 Sir
After watching
规定。
the video
我们只
that
想要让
talking about the Tai Ji Men
保
case,
障人权
we
的声
really
音，让我
cannot
们财政
imagine
部，让我
these
们可以听到。
violations and abuse actually
我们
happening
不
in Taiwan.
是无理
And
取闹。
unfortunately, Tai Ji Men's
专权
land
的
is
国家的
being enforced by
体
the
制
state outright, which seriously infringe
总统
on
府
their freedom of religion and belief and their basic human rights.
监察
And
院
this also pointed out a severe structural issue, which is the unjust legal system that has harmed many people in Taiwan. So now we can see the live stream that numerous volunteers are now in front of the National Taxation Bureau because they are now protesting and appealing that the government should redress all the unjust tax cases. And now we can see the volunteer of the Tax and Legal Reform League is now talking.
人民青春的浪费，从第一代的祸害到第二代，现在第三代都站出来了。
He said that there are a lot of cases that pass generation to generation,
我
and
们每一个在场每一个，
most of the unjust tax cases are not yet resolved because of the unjust tax system.
最后我想要讲一个是，当我们国家说我们要遵守国际人权2公约。 爱护台湾的时候，
Okay, so this volunteer is now talking about the two covenants that we've just mentioned.
就像今天一样，我自愿当志工，我没有领半毛钱，我自己一大早5点。
So he said that
昨天晚上看2公约的直播，看到2、3点才睡觉。
as a volunteer, it is
政府官员还要认真啊！政府官员如果都像我那么认真，国家就有希望了。
okay. He said that if the government in Taiwan is as hardworking as he is, then now Taiwan will be a really good country, a really peaceful country for people to live in. However, our government officials are not, like what he said, is not hardworking at all, and our government officials don't have the basic human rights spirit when they rule the people, when they rule Taiwan. And so this is the main reason that caused a lot of unjust cases, which violates the human rights.
他的哪一条法
And
条是错误
even
的？
a lot of cases
就只有一个单位
persecute
叫做财政部
the。basic
我很不客
rights
气的讲财
for the
政部，
people to
因为
live.
当时你的报告的
And
写
so
里面
this
嘛，
really
不能
is a
胡说话。
serious issue.
他说我们没有一条违反两公约啊，大家信
And
吗？
he is now
我
talking
相
about
信。
the government
真的笑
officials
死人了，
now
我说
in
实在的，
Taiwan
阿婶你想说
when
我很胡乱，
the
我快速的讲一
when
下。
the National Committee of the Two Covenants
我们国家
traveled
不
to
是有规定要
Taiwan
课人民
and
税，
to
都解释很令呢，解释很令
tell
什么？
a panel to
宪法法律的解释很
review
令，为什
if
么不一样？
our government really implement the two covenants into
说
all the
你说我为了这个差一点事情是很令。 没有立法院登记
okay,
通
so
过，
our government officials they actually didn't really implement the two covenants into their ruling or into
改到现在2020年达到多少条吗？9000多条，不但没有改变多啊，都是谁出的钱？人民，都是老百姓出的钱啊。这个是个反复国家吗？所以今天为什么我们
he is now talking about Taiwan is not a country with rule of law because the government
家庭的时间，我们
did a lot of illegal acts.
高高在上的官员跟我们老百姓讲，欢迎问下台。你如果要人权两公约，你先解决这个26年迫害人权的案件。
He is now talking about if our government really implemented the two covenants, then they will readjust
大家可以
the
去
case,
维
such
持
as
治
Tai Ji
安
Men case,
可以去
over
文
26
情，也不
years,
用说排休，
and
都不用，
to
都不用。只要官员把法令改掉，我们就把这问题解决了。就其实是这样而已。
not only readjust the
第
case,
三个
but
就是
restore
我
the
们国
people's
家
reputation
写一个
and to
真正诚实
give
的报
back
告。
the
没有一个
land
人
illegally
希望他的
enforced.
孩子不诚实，没有一个人民希望他的国家不诚实。他写一个真的报告，诚实的报告，面对你自己，面对我们
He
自
is
己
now
每一个人
talking
良心。
about to be a true
我写
person
这个报告
not
有没有
to
为我们下一代着想？有没有为我们这一代的青年着想？
is a fundamental value.
如果有的时候，我们国家进步了，
However,
我
our
们国家
government
变成两公约的国
lies
家，
to
我
the
们国家
international
人权
community
提升了，
members
也轻松
and
了，
they lie to the people in
人民
Taiwan
也快乐了，
and keep
就是这样而已。
using
接下来
illegal acts to
我邀请
persecute.
我们国际的青年对国际发声，因为很多国外的
So
媒体
he
都在
said
看，
that
国
now
外
we
的
have
媒
to
体包含 Peter Winter 等等，
invite more and more
还有
people,
电台都要帮我播报
um,
台湾的宗教
young
信仰、人
generations
权
needs
用司法宪法
to
迫害人
call
权事件。
upon the international community to talk about the human rights issue.
From our international community and dear friends
Okay,
in
so
Government
now
Live Broadcast.
this is
And I believe
the
we have-
international
the people
volunteer
have been to,
of
in front of the Ministry
Action
of
Alliance
Finance
to Read the
for,
Content.
I don't
And
know
so
how
let's
many times,
take a
but
look.
for years we've been taking to the streets, calling out for the government to help us fix all the injustice that is going on in no matter the Tai Ji Men
我刚刚贴了一些税债务
all
的
the
案例，
tax,
然后我们
unjust tax cases that is hurting the people and that is devastating our country, the democratic and the rule of law of Taiwan right now. And so I feel really sad, and actually I'm not really feeling comfortable right now, but have you ever think that why we people still have to spend our time, spend our own money, spend our everything? We all have our own lives to live, we have our stuff to do, but we still have to spend time standing here telling our officials, telling our government to do the right thing. And today is the second day of the Venice committee going on in in the Zhang Fa Foundation right now. And we really hope that our human rights could be protected, because human rights is not a thing that officials or anyone just speak with. Human rights is what you practice. Human rights is our freedom that we are born with. And for example, the case, I believe a lot of people have heard it before, and it's now sent into the United Nations right now. It's the Tai Ji Men case. It has been lasted for more than a quarter of a century, which is over 26 years, and it couldn't end. This injustice couldn't end because there is a problem between the officials and in the unjust tax and law system. The National Taxation Bureau, when they impose taxes, they don't have to have the evidence. They can just impose tax bills to people. And they don't have to investigate it. But with people, when they receive the tax bill, they have to prove that they are innocent. And to prove that they are innocent, for example, if the National Taxation Bureau gives you $3 million of tax bill, you have to pay $1 million to fight, to prove, to show to the court that you are innocent. And this is a condition. So with this unjust condition, there is a problem that we don't have the right. We don't have our basic human rights to go to the court and prove our innocence. And second, in our country, the administrative court, people nearly don't win. 99% of the people lose in the court, which is really a ridiculous thing in the whole world. Because in America, in India, in Germany, people have at least 38, 50, or 60, or more than this percent of people will win in tax cases. But in Taiwan, people won't win, which means they won't get back their money. And then the other point is, if you receive the tax bill that isn't yours, and you have no money to fight, you have no money to go to the court, then the enforcement agency will just enforce, will seize your property, will take away your money, take away your house, and auction it off, which is illegal, and which is right now happening in the 21st century in this world, in the democratic country, in Taiwan right now. This injustice is going on for so long, for decades, and people have been running it in vain. And we believe, we wish, because we all love our country so we take to the street, we spend our time. We don't get any money. And mostly what we face is that our officials, our government, they don't come out and face us. So we stand here and facing all the police, which is really ironic. So through this time, the Venance Committee, we hope that with the 10 reviewers who have see what's going on in Taiwan right now, we hope with their help and also with the awareness of all the Taiwanese people with our human rights, our government could really put the two venants into our law and to really practice it and to rectify all the illegal, to rectify all the unjust cases, to revoke all the illegal tax bills so that people could survive, people could get freedom that they were born with. So we will keep on going to fight for what we deserve, and we hope that our country could become a real democratic country with the rule of law. Thank you.
好，我们感谢我们的国际青年到场来发声。那我们今天也要告诉现场所有的志工以及直播前所有的观众朋友，我们今天来财政部的目的很简单，就是让我们官员看见人民的决心。我们严正的呼吁坐在财政部里面的高官，不要再滥用公权力来霸凌人民了，因为财政部一直以来都是集所有台湾违法官员的大毒窟，10几20年来，我们的包庇底下的国税局、部税署，未经查证开出违法税单来霸凌人民，用官员的税制来迫害台湾的百姓。而在今天，第3次国际人权2公约的审查，在我们国际的专家学者来台检视台湾是否真正落实国际人权2公约的同时，就像刚刚志工所提到，只有财政部在报告写说，我们没有任何一个法条去违反了国际2公约，但事实上财政部才是让台湾造成最多百姓遭受到税灾的迫害以及人权的迫害。Especially 国税局的主管机关，但是当我们的国税局对人民开出违法税单不经查证时，我们的财政部不会去检讨，我们的财政部包庇底下的官员，继续为了贪渎奖金，为了贪渎绩效的利益，对人民一而再、再而三的开出违法税单。带大家回顾我们财政部的最高的官员是怎么说的？前财政部次长张胜和说：“没有奖金就不足以养廉。”我们已故的财政部部长许瑜则说：“若要讲人权，就不用课税了。”在财政部部长的眼里，课征人民的税收比重视台湾的人权更加的重要。还有现任的财政部部长苏建荣，在立法院接受我们立法委员咨询，去年2021年1年的时间，高达4327亿。
A public servant how can you your basic human rights? How can you not follow the basic, the fundamental human? And there is a really earn more tax bonuses. A lot of tax officials will
来荼毒台湾的百姓，因为在他们眼里没有人权，只有奖金。大家知道吗？查税奖金是戒严时期的遗毒。早在2004年，朱新宇联合立法委员朱新宇联合163位的立法委员，早就已经将这个万恶的税务奖励金给废除。但是我们财政部的官员为了钱呐，将这个税务奖励金死灰复燃，用作业要点不断的为了奖金对人民开出违法的税单。所以我们今天来到这边，不是形式上的，只是来这边讲了几句话。我们是很严正的告诉我们的财政部官员，人民的眼睛是雪亮的，我们绝对不会再包庇所有的违法官员，纵容底下的国税局，还有我们的赋税署的官员，对人民不断的迫害人权。台湾已经落实国际人权2公约国内法化超过12年，但是我们的官员不断的用各种作业要点、解释函令，开出违法的税单，来迫害人民的生存权、财产权、自由权。我们也不第一次来到这边，10几年来，我们不断的来到财政部前，从旧财政部到新的财政部。2020年，我们站上街头，到行政执行署站了31天，到财政部
the
干了
rights
1个
for
多月，但是没有一位有担当的官员愿意下来承担责任，只会让这些警察应该站在第一线作为人民保护的警察，拿出巨马把人民挡于门外。这就是小英政府所说的人权立国吗？我们现在也看到警察要拿出警告的字牌了，就像今天中午的时候我们在在文化基金会前面一样。
The government officials
告诉
never
大家，根据国际人权两公约
to
第
the
18 条、
people. So this
第
is
19
really
条。
a
言论、
ridiculous
意见表达自由以及第21条，集会、结社、游行的自由。
their
人
salary
民
is
抗议
from
根本不
the
需要
tax
申请，
that
而且我们是有
collected
申
from
请的哦。
we
但
the
这些官
people.
员就是不想让这
Why
些声音
can't
传进去，
government
告诉我们国际的审查委员，让他们听到，所以就叫警察出来举违
so
反的字牌。
they
但
keep
是
on their
这明显
process
的违反
to
国际人
let
权两
the
公约
government know
所保障
the
人民的言论、意见表达以及集会结社的自由。
And there is
当
another
人民
thing
站出
that
来诉说心
while
声
they are
向政府官员请
protesting
愿的时候，政府官员
the police
避而不听，
officers
只会派警察出来用巨马
abuses
举
the
抗议的字
students'
牌，
freedom
说人
of
民违
speech,
法。那我们
the
请问一下，
freedom
到底是
to
警察拿牌违法，还是百姓违法？因为根据国际人权两公约，这已经侵犯
and
了
so
人
this
民应该拥有
is
的权利。
another
我
violation
们希望我们的审查
to
委员
the
能够
covenants
与人民
to
站
the
在同一阵线。
fundamental
让台湾
value
能够真正的落实国际人权两公约，不要只在喊着民主、法治、人权立国
from
的
the
口号，
international
完
community,
全无所作为。我们
which
站上街
everyone
头，
talks about
和平理
human
性的
rights.
表达诉
Everyone
求。
knows
我
that
们只
human
是
rights
希
is
望
going with
让人民的
but
心声能
now
够让我们的政府官员
Taiwanese
真的听见。
they don't understand about
所以
human
我们
rights.
今
They
天再次喊出我们站上街头的口号：捍卫人权，捍卫人权，坚持到底，坚持到底。 审查委员，审查委员，抢救人权，
fight for the human rights.
各位女士先生，
So now we
我
can
是
see the
县长
police
指挥官
officers in
文山
is
第二
now
分局景美派出所所长
violating
曾玉顺。
their
你们的行为已经
rights
违反集会游行法
again.
规定。我现在依集会游行法第25
So
条
the police
第一次
that
举牌警告，请你们
following
停止违
the
法
rule
集
of
会，
protest.
立即解散。以上是
Number
文山第
25
二分局分局长林明志的决
He
定。
wants
宣达人
protest
县长
to
指挥
now
官文山第二分局景美派出所所长曾玉顺。现在时间中华民国111年5月10号16时31分。
4:34 p.m. now in Taiwan.
那我们这么多人在这里，这些人
So this is
没有事
under
情做，这些
officer.
人都是良
Okay.
民啊。
He said that these
今天只是
people
要
are
表达一个诉求，
really good
什
people.
么就是
But
我们
why?
台湾的人权更需要进步。昨天
These people are here is because Taiwan's human rights must
审查
improve.
人权两公约讲了非常重要的宣示，说人权是不是地板，保护人权是不是地板。
Yesterday, the Taiwanese government official said that human rights
苏贞昌院长也特别
of
讲
the two
说，
commitment committees said that
人权
human
两公约
rights
国内法化之后，
is
它最
the
重要的
floor,
目标
not
就是让台湾
the
的
ceiling.
人权水准
However,
国际接轨。这位两位领导人讲的都非常的好听，但是我们来
when
看一看，
Tsai Ing-wen, the leader of
以
Taiwan,
下所有政府官员是不是这
said
样
that
做到这样的一个宣
Taiwan
誓的呢？
human rights must
刚才那个青年讲了
link
两点
with,
非常重
must
要，
connect with
就
the
是
individual.
9000多条解释函令。
But
解
these
释函令
are
是什么？
the
我才
good
不
words,
说
are
了算，
just words that
磨下
she
来我就用这一条，磨
never
下来就用这一条，这两条不一样。这个磨甲过2个月来，我用第3条，这条跟它也不一样。
never
要解释函令，
complete this.
解释函令在上一次的第2次审查的时候，就被人权这个被审查委员说不宜如此，结果财政部说我们没有违反任何人权，
So when the
刚才也讲
covenant
到有关
review
这
committees
个
from the two
奖励
covenants
金的问
said
题，
that
奖励金是诱使人家犯罪的最重要的
the
元
tax
首，
bureaus,
这
the
个就是一
tax
个动机，
authorities,
在保
some
护
of
利益的人
their
要不应该有这样子做。我
strategies,
再讲
some
第
of their
三个更
systems
严重的，
is
刚
violating
才有讲到
the
说
human
我们
rights.
的
Our tax
法律
official
很多
said,
是从
no,
威权体制
we
转型过来的。
every
虽然基
we
本法第25条，
following the law,
只要
we
你
didn't
欠税，
violate
只要你
any
欠费，一纸公文还是不一
article
纸
or
公文就
any
把你限
rule
制出境，
of human
不
rights
需要经过任何
violation.
审判。更糟糕的是，1996年，我们大法官竟然解释，为了保有国家的税收没有违宪之余，1996年记得1996年大法官的解释是一个违反人权的解释。
So he said that in 1996 there is a
回到台湾，
chief
从
justice's
戒严到解严到转型
comment
民主过程当中，
to a
到
law
了2016年，台湾才真正进入第二次的
said that
政
one
党
of
轮
the
替，
rules
国际社会
is
才
not
比较认可台湾在民主转型，已
the
经从
violation of
威
human
权
rights
转型到所谓的民主时代
because，
中间呢就是后威权主义时代。
want to earn more
后威
tax
权主义
in
时代仍然有非常多的以政府公权力
situation
去迫害
and
人权的事
a
件。
lot of
1996 年
events
记得跟那个大法官同一天过。
cases that are
1996
all
年的时候，
serious
整个
violation
这个
to
政
human
府重
rights,
教扫黑，台
such
湾有
as
7、8个甚至有
the
10几
case,
个
the Tai Ji
信
Men
仰
case
团
that
体、
we
宗教团体受
worked,
到波及。
and he said
太
that
极门的
none
这
of
个
the
人权个案里头，是典
religious
型当时
or
受到波
spiritual
及的。
groups
而我们知道，人权两公
were
约，
persecuted by
或
the
者是
government, were
联合国
illegally
的宪
issued
章，或者是
a tax, a
这个
base
人权
tax.
宣言，它所
Tai Ji
保
Men
障的人权的
is
价
the
值，
only
宗
is the
教信
only
仰
victim
的自
who
由
was
价值是一个最关键的价值，
issued,
它是
who
全
was
球治理的基础。
illegally persecuted.
那联合国也知道，在这种这个极权主义转型到极权主义的国家过程当中，都有非常多的威权体制要去迫害人权的视线。所以在2004年，安南秘书长特别在理事会里头特别提到，面对
So in 2004, the ministry said that
要用
the
转型正义的精神，给予弥补，
things
给予
that
修
the
复，
use
整个社会才能往前
of
走。
government
他提了5个主要要件，第一个要件是什么？要追求
included
真相
of 5
也
elements.
就是当时谁造成他这个样的人权侵犯案件。第二
So
个
the
要
5
负责
elements
当
are
事人
what
不惜一切的
causes the events
第三个就是
afterwards.
什么？要道歉赔偿。
The third is they need to apologize and they need to pay back.
不能再发。第6个是实现问题，只要是违反人权，没有因为10年过后、20年过后，他就不违反人权了。
So the sixth one is the problem is always a problem, even though it's after 10 years or 20 years, it's always a problem. So the government need to be responsible for the bad things they used to do.
通过转型正义条例，它对于所造成的人权迫害事件，在转型正义的第6款第1项里头特别讲，对于过去的所有的不正义的判决，应该重新调查。到了2021年3月23号，转型正义委员会撤销了5923条。
So the conference took away the 5,003 laws. So what this is emphasizing is that it is the same with the Annan ministry. However, the president said you cannot cut over that. And you cannot think that after 1966 there are no violations in the human rights in Taiwan. In reality, there are still many violations in tax bill and human rights in Taiwan after 1966. So President Tsai police still you need to.
大家一起争取的。
So you still need to deal with the violation of human rights, and all of the people in Taiwan and all of us need to stand out and speak for it, so that we can have a better future.
在这里，我们想要跟大家说，大家辛苦了。但是呢，
So in these 2 days, all of the volunteers, you're hardworking. I can see it.
自2013年，
However, we are very sad about the things we made.
各位线上所有观众好朋友，好，感谢我们刚刚在财政部现
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
的青年朋友，然后有蔡教授
We can see volunteers and
到现场，一起
people
为
in
人民发声
front of the Ministry of Finance.
那我们现在大家可以看到我们线上也邀请到
So now we can see
教授，
we invited the Professor Wu.
同时也是真理大学法律系的教授。那想请教一下教授，就是
He's from the Fight for Tax
国际人
Reform.
会来审查，那有谈到了很多的议题。
So in the 2 covenant conference meeting and in these 2 days, there are many laws and many violations discussed in the meeting.
年到1992年之间发生的案件才符合我们政府所说所要执行。
So it's not only the events happened in the middle of 1954 and 1962. It's the violation of human rights. Other than the time periods, it's also the things we need to consider a lot about. So other than tax bills and the conference meeting, in these 2 days, there are still many other topics about the freedom of sex. So in the beginning, I would like to thank all of the volunteers from in front of the Finance of Ministry, all of the Fight for Tax, Fair Tax volunteers. Thank you. So we can see what are the police doing in front of the Finance of Ministry.
我希望这些国际人权的所谓的委员，这一些专家们，能够走出来面对群众。
So as I mentioned yesterday, please all of the people inside the building, please stand out and stand outside to see all of the volunteers and what they're actually talking about, and just not only sitting inside the building, sitting on the chair and listening to what the officials are talking about.
到了21世纪，我们要会游行。
稍等一下，后台调。
So please wait a minute. There's a little bit problem about the technique.
那我们请那我们观众好朋友也可以趁这个时间留言一下，你看到现场的画面，想给志工好朋友什么样的鼓励？
So during the meantime, all of the people in front of the computer, in front of the cell phone, you can put what you want to talk about to all of the volunteers hardworking in front of the Ministry of Finance. You can write down your words and let us know.
我昨天就提到了，这些国际人权，你应该走出来吧？你看一下这个场景嘛。
So as I mentioned yesterday, all of the people in the buildings, you should stand out and see what the people are talking about.
竟然认为说这个是违法，请问一下
What is happening is that all of the volunteers did not do anything outside the building, but the police is reminding all of the volunteers not to speak so loud.
现在我们呢户外的集会游行还要向警察
So it is ridiculous that up to now, the 21st century, all of the people in Taiwan, we still need to tell the police what we want to do outside and what we want to gather together. However, this is our freedom, so this should not
唯独就是说你讲出来了以后，如果你有涉及到诽谤啦、公然侮辱啦，好，那才
So
有
this
刑
should
事的
not
问
be
题嘛，对
limited.
不对？但绝对不能事前审查。那你诉坏的集会游行，你呢今天又有警察机关来事前来申请许可，这个不就是对言论的事前审查吗？你到了21世纪，你还在举那个牌，我看了真的是汗颜呐。
So this is really ridiculous that up to the 21st century,
听那些官员在讲那些屁话，你
only
就
the
走出来
volunteers
嘛。
is taking out the board and the police is reminding about not to speak in so loud.
一个礼拜3天，
So
然后呢，
again,
写报告就回去，然后再
please
听
all of the
听那
people
些
in the
官员在那边
building
自吹
stand out
自
and
擂，
listen to what the
有什么
people are
意义嘛？
talking about.
而且你们的钱是我们纳税人
This
缴
is
钱的
nonsense,
哦，
only
所以
to
我
do
先强调
least.
这一点。再来就是转型正义的问题，我对这个条例从一开始它制定，我
So
就很有
next
意见。
is the transitional
为什么？
justice.
首先第一个就是刚才主持人提到的时间性的
There are
问题。
many problems
难道
inside
我
the
们到了那个动员戡乱，它是从1945嘛，到这个1992，就是动员戡乱时期中期这一段时间，那我要问各位嘛，难道我们的所谓的冤
So
错
let me ask,
假案这
between
些呢，过去呢
1945 and
被防止到
1992,
1995年就没有了吗？
there are many
你不要
human
开
rights
玩笑好不
violations.
好？
However, I
所以
would
呢，
like
这
everyone,
我觉得在某
are
种
there
程
any
度
other
呢，
violations
这
other
个
than
驻
this time
管
period?
条例本
Is it
身，它
possible?
就是
Let us
呢
think
有
about
目
it.
的性的嘛，它只针对某一些特定的时期
So
嘛，对象
this
也
is
针对特定
on
的团体
purpose.
嘛，它根本不想去解决真正的转型正义的问题嘛。
The government
比方
did not
说，而且这个转
really
型它
want
里
to
面转
deal
型
with
正义
the
的问题也非
problem
常的
about the
狭隘嘛，大概
transitional
就是
justice
白跟
because
白色恐怖
it
时
is
代被
impossible
呢
that there are
这
only
个
violations
在
between
二阶级下受到
1945
司
and
法判决的嘛，所以它也非常狭隘。
1996.
所以呢，老实讲呢，那个只是为了某一个政党而服务的条例啦，不谈也罢了啊。好了啊，就算是这
So
样
be
的，那
honest,
今
now the
年呢，
transitional
驻
justice
短
is just
委
for
员会它已
one
经
of the
延一次了嘛，那今年大概不会再延了。可是我们就要
party in the Taiwan,
问
so
现
it
在的
is
驻
not
短委员会，
actually helping the
你们
people in
这
Taiwan.
4年到底做了什么嘛？你们除了
So what
定时的公
exactly
布
in the
公
4
布那
years?
个
How
档
are you
案
do?
以
What did
及
you
呢
do during the 4
这
years?
个这个画面那个。
我们吴教授可能暂时发生一些状况，需要处理一下。那刚刚吴教授有提到，像是我们的转型正义，今天在审查委员会上，其实就有团体提出来，因为委员们还有许多团体其实很关注，在人权2公约里
So the transitional justice that Professor Wu just mentioned is actually mentioned in the panel today by NGOs to discuss with the two convenants committee. And so the thing that they are talking about violates the martial law in Taiwan and violates the two covenants, the spirit of the two covenants, that is the human rights. And Taiwan's human rights nowadays is not really improved. And it seems like the two covenant committees haven't really goes into. Okay, so the professor is now back, but there is still some technique issues.
所以呢，我刚才呢有提到，就是说我在
So Professor Wu said
4年即将应该不会再演了。
what I mentioned previously.
公布一些档案，而且是选择性的公布，它也不是全部公布。
警察先生、警察小姐，谢谢你们。
Okay, we are now back to the live stream of the protests in front of the Taxation Bureau, the National Taxation Bureau. And now we can see it is raining there. And now the protesters. Okay, it seems like there is another internet issue. So we are here back to our channel, and then we've mentioned about a lot of serious issues that happening in that is now happening in Taiwan, including the one that we mentioned, the one that the volunteers are protesting with. The main issue is about the Tai Ji Men case, because this is a case which is highlighted and is really is high. It caused a high awareness in the international community, and one of the executive editor of the internationally renowned human rights magazine Bitter Winter said that primary political right of human beings is the right to live according to one's religious beliefs, and that the tax case is merely an excuse used by the Taiwanese government to deprive the freedom of worship of Tai Ji Men, shifu, and disciples. And he said that this can happen anywhere and to anyone. And so in this sense, everyone, we are all Tai Ji Men now. So according to the words that Marco Respinti mentioned, this is why the international committees from the two covenants, they should really be aware of this case. And we are here to call upon the two covenants committees to put this case, to put the transitional justice into the concluding observations and recommendations adopted by the International Review Committee, because Taiwan really needs their help to really improve the Taiwanese human rights. And the first step is to redress Tai Ji Men case. And there is 3 really important things about this case that the committee should be aware of. The first one is the sacred land that was illegally auctioned off by the enforcement agency must return back to the Tai Ji Men disciples. And the second thing is they must restore their reputation. And the third is they must implement the transitional justice to really implement the human rights, the spirit of human rights in Taiwan. And so there is another thing that we want to share with the friends in front of the broadcast. So the next thing is we talk about Tai Ji Men, the Tai Ji Men case, right? And there is another video is talking about how did their sacred land was enforced by the enforcement agency. So now let's take a look at this video.
The auction process has been legally concluded.
It's our sacred land! How dare you! How dare you! How dare you! How dare you! Robbing people's property! Robbing people's property!
I saw a streak of shadow in his eyes. Based on my instinct from years of handling cases, I think that he might have raised goblins.
If based on the look in your eyes, a prosecutor can decide whether to prosecute you or not, then there will be no peace in Taiwan.
I think these values should be honored in tax law as well. The first, second, and third trials all rule the nature of the money in question as gifts. Then it should not be a tax as tuition for a cram school.
Because he thinks this is a respect for the master. It is a kind of gift, where the indictment is unacceptable. If the tax authority uses this indictment as the basis for taxation, I think it is questionable.
Code doesn't count. The code doesn't count. The code doesn't count. We still want to emphasize that Tai Ji Men indeed is not a cram school. We would like to commend Tai Ji Men for its contribution to sports and family life education.
It has been confirmed that the money involved is a gift rather than income. So there is no issue of income tax. For the facts confirmed in a criminal court ruling, the administrative agencies have no reason not to adopt them.
You can go to the website of the Control Yuan to see that I have issued 7 corrections. For each correction, the NTB said, we made a mistake. In 2011, I told the Minister of Finance that this case should be closed. He didn't take it as his own business. He thought, I took the bonus anyway, and if there is any tax due, it is you that should pay it.
In the criminal and legislative aspects, Tai Ji Men has been declared innocent of all charges. Tai Ji Men has won the case. As for the National Taxation Bureau in the executive yuan system, our appeal has been heard in the Supreme Court. The final decision of the 3 court trials confirmed Tai Ji Men innocent. At the National Taxation Bureau, within the Ministry of Finance's appeal system, Tai Ji Men once again won the case. Even the control yuan decided that Tai Ji Men is innocent. I can't think of any ways after numerous legislators have inquired regarding this case. I can't think of any other course of action in our country's legal system can be taken to solve the case. I really don't know what is going on. Is it how our country's legal system is designed?
This case has been dragged for more than 10 years and is unable to be resolved. The administrative agencies have to take full responsibility, while the administrative agencies exercise administrative discretion. They have to ensure that people's human rights on taxation are protected, which is the most important spirit and objective.
The whole judicial system has proved Tai Ji Men innocent. There's no way the investigation by the tax agencies is clearer than that by the judicial department.
I know this issue has wasted too much time and resource. This is very serious, and it has shaken the 5 branches of government and the foundation of the nation. Calling on the Taxation Bureau to revoke its illegal tax bills. You just ignore them. Hey, you think you are above us? You ignore courts, the control yuan, and even the legislative yuan. You really think you're the boss?
All the information and evidence is here. It's spread out all over the floor. And you clearly know that you are in the wrong. What you've said in the past is questionable. But you want to continue to make the same mistake? That's bad. We request that the Ministry of Finance conclude this case in 2 months. Exactly what to do and what are you going to do? Don't delay anymore.
Gifts in nature. The others all say gifts too. Let the NTB of the Central Area submit the report to the Ministry of Finance. It's the NTB of the Central Area. It's not good to let them take full responsibilities. Just report to the ministry. Okay, we'll do as the Deputy Minister says. We'll send our official report to the Ministry of Finance. Just now we said to revoke. Revoke it? Okay, area will report to the Ministry of Finance.
Ministry of Finance sent letters to legislator Qiu Jingtian, Xing Zhetu, and Justin Chao, saying it had demanded the National Taxation Bureau of the Central Area to revoke the execution pursuant to Article 40 of the Tax Collection Act. 4 days later, the National Taxation Bureau of the Central Area in turn sent a letter to the Hsinchu branch of the Administrative Enforcement Agency requesting it to stop the execution pursuant to Clause 3 of Article 9 of the Administrative Enforcement Law.
The bidding process is supposed to be open. I can hear the sound from the auction room. I can hear what happened.
Dropping number 1 to number 100 bids into the tender box.
Which one do you follow for the 1030 action? Please answer. Li Guifeng, Senior Executive Officer. Which one do you follow? No, there is no mention of 1030. Euro 11, okay?
We have internal operating guidelines.
Then show them to me immediately.
They are written on the official website.
Okay, then you can show me your website right away.
We don't have the internet here.
How can it be?
Why should government officials follow their conscience? He does not dare to show his moral courage and leave the people in the sun, wasting not only the resources of the people, but also the resources of the country. I think that government officials should be conscientious and should administer policies in accordance with the law and bring this case to an end as soon as possible.
It is taxing illegally. This wrongful and false case has lasted for more than 20 years. If the 1992 tax bill of the Tai Ji Men wrongful and false case is not rectified, then we can say that there is tyranny in Taiwan.
Thousands of people surround the auction site in Miaoli. Even if the iron gate was locked in front of them, the people still sat and wait to defend the land. The Tai Ji Men case, in which over 10,000 people have been victimized, has lasted for 24 years, but the enforcement agency still wanted to auction the land of Tai Ji Men to pay back a wrong tax bill when Tai Ji Men was found not guilty of tax evasion by the court 13 years ago.
If a person on death row cannot be executed when he is later found innocent, then why did the 1992 tax bill issued by the Supreme Administrative Court get executed? Officials from the Ministry of Justice also said it was legal to carry out the enforcement. So is the Su Chan-ho case. It's legal. They could have executed the death penalty. Why didn't they execute it at the time? It's because there is a problem. Since it is a problematic judgment, the enforcement agency should not have executed it. So why did they execute it? Why? It's a question of bonuses. When the Tai Ji Men case was handled like this, will ordinary people encounter the same problem? Definitely.
The administrative enforcement agency is not qualified. It is not objective and neutral, and it is not qualified to enforce the enforcement law. In order to frame people, it deceived the public and broke the law. The truth will finally be revealed.
The state does not have the power to seize people's property, and the administrative system should not persecute people and their family.
The entire auction is completely illegal. Based on the Supreme Court's decision, Supreme Administrative Court's decision, the investigation report of the Control Yuan, and from the arguments put forward by various experts and scholars both at home and abroad, it is an unlawful judgment, but after the first unlawful auction, it is actually going on for the second time today. Now they are really going to execute it, and they have violated Article 129 of the criminal law for the crime of unlawful expropriation. We will file another lawsuit later.
大事还是什么？你怎么谈事一算？对不对？他当时通知我说办这案子的时候，我去看，我说这样不好吧？
我就给他提出来，这个人怎么这么干？
他说就这样办。
就这样子办。
所以说，那时候人家找我的时候，人家讲这案子有问题。
对。
没有人要听啊。
没有人要听。所以你那个时候，您说就这样办是调处的人跟你讲的，然后你那资料人说有问题，结果他也
后来有人找我，人家讲，是有问题，我们是办顺的。你来我们怎么看吧？但是呢，让人家讲，我说就是麻子你，我当时是看，我说。你们怎么算的？他拿给我看，这你从哪里来的？你是不是？我说这样不能算吧？然后他就说，他说啊，这不裁，不裁，然后你要怎么样？他说我们是这样的。你们要想啊，这就是要说嘛，那不是才怪我，台湾人啊找我是，他纯粹是
打混，你是说他找你去只是做样子而已？就是你不管说什么，反正他写他的，是不是？他配合是调处吗？
他执法，
那是啥？
他执法。那时候10年前的案子，他知道是都分开看。
Regarding the Tai Ji Men case, it was taxed from 1991 to 1996. It was strange. How could this happen? So, you see, a search was conducted on December 19, 1996. He said that there was tax evasion. The income tax in 1996 cannot be audited until April 1997. They had not yet filed their taxes. How could you investigate tax evasion? How do you know how they will file their tax return? Therefore, the tax years involved in the case clearly showed that this violated the tax law. Those who study the law know that you cannot prosecute or convict a person without getting the cash flow data. During the search on December 19, 1996, 2 bank statements show the balance of $22,000. However, the next day, a newspaper published that the master of Tai Ji Men had $110 million income from fraudulent acts and cram school tuition. You can't make such an inference even when you are writing a novel. How did they come up with this number? $22,000 times 5,000 is exactly $110 million. Probably that was how they got the number. The so-called evidence obtained after the search can be proved to be false, because you already said the amount. The transcripts and testimony. When were they done? Definitely after December 20th. Could I know how much tax you have evaded the minute I am assigned to the case when auditing taxes? It's more than illegal taxation. It's the so-called framing. $22,000 was blown up to be $110 million. Then this is all imagined. If they can impose taxes on people without evidence, then do we still need tax agencies? You can collect whatever amount of tax you want if you find more prosecutors like him. It's that simple. It's very clear in the Tai Ji Men tax case that the tax officers and Taxation Bureau imposed illegal taxes. Whether the tax laws applied or the tax demand are not justified. Imposing taxes based on imaginary data is absolutely against the principle that taxes should be imposed according to the law. No other nations that implement income taxes have this kind of practice.
Tai Ji Men进三审疑点。昭告天地，太极门人，捍卫圣地，誓死不屈。
So these detailed movies tell us that in Taiwan there is a lot of unique bonus system, and this bonus system allows unconscionable officials to fabricate fake tax cases. And tax officials even issue false tax bills and false evidence for performance and bonus, and only simply treating the people as cash machines. So let me tell you one more thing. Every one of us in Taiwan was exposed to significant tax disaster risks. For example, according to statistics, in all 90 Taiwanese people's tax overdue bills to enforce for 1.89 million cases. But by the end of 2021, the Justice Administrative Execution Department announced that the new tax amount due to compulsory execution case full stage has reached to 14.31 million cases. So can you imagine that people in Taiwan have so many collapse and so many unusual cases? So, and actually the Taiwanese people doesn't really have so many tax bill issues. And what is the story behind the tax story, and what is the story behind the tax disaster? There are too many tax evasion issues. However, I'll go through one by one with you with events that happened in Taiwan. So at first is a lawyer, and he is Wang Wenhuang, and he is dedicated to the public interest lawyer. Also, he volunteered to serve as a state administrator appointed by the local court, and despite the fact that he has no income. However, surprisingly, the National Tax Bureau demanded that Wang Wenhuang pay his client's inheritance tax as well as double tax fine, totaling all the tax to approximately $112 million. Undertake public welfare case infringed by National Tax Bureau. but this case has not been solved. And also, 111 lawyer may be forced at any time. He had many times that he wanted to commit suicide. However, after seeing his child, he become more encouraged by himself, and he did not commit the suicide. And next, we'll go through the event of Ms. Wu. She once attempted but failed. It is very important. And she failed to purchase a cram school that was about to close. However, the National Tax Bureau unexpectedly charged the cram school owner's tax on her head, and with a total penalty of more than $3.2 million. And even her third stage of cancer, the National Tax Bureau still enforced her bill and did not want to let her go. Even though this is not her current school, the tax bill is still on her. So next, there are still many tax issues and tax stories that truly happened in Taiwan. Next, I'll invite Lynn to introduce to you all.
Okay, thank you, Claire. So the next case is about Li Yongxian, who is a young first-time buyer, which is his first time to be able to save enough money to purchase his first home. However, after a couple of years later, he was unable to repay the large loan and had to sell his home without profit, and didn't expect that the IRS assessed him more than $1 million in luxury taxes, which is an unlawful, wrongly issued tax bill, because this tax bill ignored the fact that he sold this home without profit. On the other side, he was also issued more than $1 million in fines. Even after the luxury tax was repealed, he was plagued by illegal tax bills, which resulted in a portion of his monthly salary being diverted to the state, making him a luxury tax victim. And another case is about Chen Qingxu, and he is a single father who worked part-time for a living, and because he forgot to pay a traffic fine of 18,000 and Taiwanese dollars. However, he wasn't informed of the situation, and his house was also forced to execute. And the market value of this house is about 2.5 million, and the enforcement agency sold it as 1.35 million Taiwanese dollar again. And 3 generations of his family nearly ended up on the street because of this wrongly enforced act by the government, by the enforcement agency. And so this is really a serious violation of the proportionality and procedural justice principles. And after being found to have violated procedures and falsified evidence, the Administrative Enforcement Agency voluntarily withdrew the punishment with the assistance of professors from the Alliance and the Action Alliance of 1219 and the Tax and Legal Reform League. Okay, so these are the other 2 cases that I want to share with our friends. So next, I'll give the floor to Claire.
Okay, so next on, I'll introduce about the Zheng Jianyuan case. So Zheng Jianyuan is, because of his poor design, his dehumidifier in his house spontaneously combusted, and it caused the house and his belongings to burn out. And the professor Zheng Jianyuan reached an agreement with the home appliance manufacturer and was compensated $1 million to compensate for the loss. But even though they have a compensation, the National Tax Bureau misclassified the settlement compensation as income. And also, the National Tax Bureau fined the professor more than $200,000 in NT dollar. Only after the professor Zheng Jinyuan continued to speak publicly about his victimization, and after it, the IRS revoked the tax bill. Zheng Jinyuan is a law professor, and his wife is a judge. People can hardly believe that even in their professional knowledge, and they can still not defend their rights and interests. And we can imagine that for us, or ordinary people, we do not deserve to admit our misfortunate and accept the National Tax Bureau's illegal wanton identification. So it is hard for us to call for our rights and call for our interests. So we need to gather up together. And next on, there is another issue about another professor. And next, I'll invite Lynn to introduce to you.
Okay, so the next case that I want to share is Dr. L, who has a high reputation abroad and is one of the tax victims. On the invitation of the Ministry of Economic Affairs, he returned back to Taiwan with over 1,000 patents and applied for a patent worth $300 million as the company's capital after receiving approval from the NTB, the National Taxation Bureau, and the Ministry of Economic Affairs, and also the Industrial Development Bureau and the Taichung city government. However, Dr. L's company received a false tax bill, just like the other cases, like the other tax victims. And this time he received for hundreds of millions of dollars at the end of the year. And despite the fact that the stock obtained by the patent valuation is just a proof of capital contribution, he was forced to pay the tax bill, even though he had no income. And Dr. L failed to pay such unreasonable and high amount of tax, resulting in the seizure of his entire properties, including his houses and even thousands of patents by the enforcement agency of the Ministry of Justice, leaving he no way to live. And so at last he became a homeless guy after the company went bankrupt and lost hundreds of billions of dollars. And so these cases, these serious tax victims that we just discussed about, we just mentioned, are all serious cases that the international community must be aware of, because this is all a serious violation against the Article 11 of the ICESCR, which requires that everyone has the right to adequate standard of living, and many tax cases aren't in accordance with the principle of proportionality. So the one that we are talking about is, again, against the spiritual ideal, the spiritual human rights ideal of the two covenants. And so while we are now talking about these tax issues, these tax victims, we want to compare with another case that happened in Canada. And so in this Canada case, the Tax Bureau also violated the taxpayers' rights there in Canada. But what did the government, the illegal tax officers, what happened to them after they did some illegally act on the people? So next, let's take a look at this video.
Illegal tax officials in Canada face severe punishments. Tony and Helen are a young married couple who own and run bars, motels, and restaurants in Vancouver, Canada. Worried that the bank would no longer accept the old notes, they turned all of the old $100 and $50 notes that had been in the safe deposit box for the past 30 years into cash and deposited them into the account. The tax office was surprised when they discovered a big sum of money had been deposited into their accounts without notice. They determined that the two had hidden their business earnings, charged them with 21 counts of tax evasion, and worked with prosecutors to compel a guilty plea. The court discovered the truth after a 5-year investigation and declared all charges against them to be false. Tony, on the other hand, has been plagued by insomnia, excessive drinking, and smoking, and his health has been ruined as a result of these false accusations. Helen has become scared of other people's suspicious looks, to the point where she is hesitant to enter her own restaurant. Tricia, their daughter, even changed her last name to avoid being affiliated with criminality. Despite their innocence, the couple claimed they had been wronged and went to court to sue the prosecution, CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, and the tax investigator. These officials, according to the Supreme Court, covered up and falsely reported evidence, maliciously used the state's judicial machinery to persecute innocent people, exploited the unequal power between the state and individuals, and violated the people's basic rights, and must be strongly accused and punished. As a result, the Tax Bureau was ordered to pay the couple $750,000 Canadian in damages for malicious prosecution, as well as an additional $300,000 Canadian per person for irreparable reputational damage. Litigation costs of around $348,000 Canadian, totaling nearly 1.7 million Canadian dollars. Despite the large settlement, their lives were flipped upside down a long time ago, and the two eventually divorced, leaving the family broken and unable to reunite. Government officials should not treat citizens as thieves or bully them in the name of public power. Despite the fact that being in the public service makes it easy to practice, the judiciary is the last line of defense for justice, and officials should not use it as a thug to protect one another. Instead, they should respect the judiciary's conscience, restore justice to the people, and be held accountable for law and discipline violations.
So from the example of Canada, we can see that their system has a complete punishment mechanism compared to Taiwan. Why are there so many unjust cases? It is because there is no effective punishment mechanism, and the offending officers so that leads the offending officers continue to break the law, continue to issue the illegal tax bill to the people. So there is another case in the United States, which is the IRS in America. Not nowadays, like maybe tens of years ago, they also use various illegal methods, use tax as a weapon to persecute the human rights of Americans. And so from this unjust, unfair tax system, this also highlights the structural corruption problem of their government, in which this is almost the same situation, just like the system, just like the corruption problem nowadays in Taiwan. So now let's take a look at this video.
U.S. Tax Reform IRS Reorganization. After the end of World War I, global investment capital poured into New York and many investors became rich by making improper profits. But the government could not collect taxes. The U.S. government had no choice but to amend the law to solve the problem. According to the regulations at that time, when the tax collector issued a tax bill, the taxpayer had to prove that he or she did not owe taxes. And if he or she could not prove it, the individual had to pay the bill, which resulted in the IRS's power being expanded indefinitely. At that time, the prohibition of alcohol also caused social unrest, and illegal groups selling bootleg alcohol were protected because of their entangled interests with the mayor, council, and police. As a result, the Minister of Justice collaborated with the IRS to conduct a tax evasion sweep. The operation was successful in eliminating the gang, but it resulted in a fox in the chicken coop. As a result, when federal legislators found that the IRS had abused its authority to open tax billing investigations, the IRS discredited them, causing them to lose an election or die unjustly. After World War II, the IRS abused its power even more. No legislator dared to investigate the IRS anymore, so they were forced to amend the law to reduce the IRS's discretionary power. The tax officers, on the other hand, justified their illegal behavior based on their own interpretation and decree. Finally, the U.S. Congress proposed checks and balances to protect taxpayers' rights by establishing a special agency that would report to Congress and the public on an annual basis. When the IRS's corruption was exposed, the entire country was in uproar. The list of surprising cases is endless. One elderly couple with a small business was even reprimanded by the IRS by falsely exaggerating their income and falsifying their tax bill, causing them to lose all of their assets. The elderly man died of grief, and his wife, who was blind and wheelchair-bound at the age of 88, had no money and was so expelled from her home. They eventually discovered that senior IRS officials used the amount of tax money they received to determine rewards and promotions for tax collectors, and that they were convinced that creating fear can bring people to their knees. And that tax collectors were bold enough to do whatever it took to achieve their goals. The revelation of these incidents finally led to a consensus between the government and the opposition to reorganize the IRS and quickly give birth to the third version of the Taxpayers' Rights Act, which explicitly prohibits the 10 most common violations of taxpayers by tax agents and immediately dismisses them from their jobs. Finally, the people have been able to improve their tax rights and live in peace in the United States. According to U.S. Chief Justice John Marshall, the power to tax entails the power to destroy. Can the national government afford to be careful?
So as we can see in the video that all the people all around the world, and especially we can see in the video in America, that the human rights and the tax evasion is very emphasized. So next on, the last December 25th, the international experts signed in a letter written to President Tsai Ing-wen to express their concern, stating that the original case was a false and maliciously planted case. And next, we can go back to the conference meeting in the international meeting of ICCPR.
You continue to stop government representatives from telling lies or interrupting them or asking them whether they can make immediate commitment to abolish death penalty. I'm very touched because you play a very proactive role, but if the government truly want to carry out the two covenants, their attitude wouldn't be like something they demonstrate today. Instead of defending themselves all the time, instead of giving a lot of excuses, they should be very accepting of your recommendations. So you talk about what need to be included in a COR. I think what we need the most is you, the International Review Committee, and the committee members. Because MOJ tells the stories they want to tell. They say the two covenants are applied in judges. On their website, they say they have data. They have shown numbers of cases which use two covenants. But in fact, there are cases when the judges heard about the two covenants, but in fact didn't cite the two covenants in their judgment, so their numbers are not accurate. So I think there should be a mechanism to examine whether or not the judges actually apply the two covenants in their judges. And MOJ also says that there are rules to govern prosecutors and so on. Right, but the covenants articles are not included in those instructions. So I think they should do better. I would like to end here. Thank you.
To ask you a few questions about what you just said. First of all, I may have misunderstood, but I think there's an inconsistency between the two of you about the role of the covenant. I thought that you, the first speaker, said that people had argued, or defense lawyers, or the issue of the covenant had been raised and presented to judges who had then not ordered the death penalty because they were influenced by the covenant. But the second speaker seemed to suggest that it actually was being ignored. I don't know if I got the message right, but how would we characterize that? Because you can put it in a negative. There's a kind of a negative version of this.
没有误解。
No, there's no.
Let me finish. There's a negative version of describing it, which is that the government, the prosecutors, for example, don't tell the judges about the covenant or don't argue the covenant. But to hear that actually lawyers, whether it's the prosecutor or the defense lawyers, who raise the issue of the covenant, and then the judges decide not to impose the death penalty as a result, for me, I smile when I hear that. I think this is a wonderful example of the influence of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. So part of what we have to do is, you understand, we can't write a manifesto about the abolition of the death penalty in our concluding observations. We have to deal with a lot of issues. We're going to deal with this appropriately, I'm confident. We haven't written the concluding observations yet. But we have to get the right tone as well, and to appreciate what, if the covenant is having a positive impact on the reduction in death sentences and in the use of capital punishment, it seems to me this is something that we may want to acknowledge. But I sense from you that would be making it look too positive, that the message should be negative. So this is a little bit what I'm trying to figure out. Can you clarify that idea for me? I have a second question for the Taiwan Alliance that's in the report, where it's not in the...
But can we perhaps first clarify the first question, yeah?
In fact, what she said and what I said are both correct, because she said some judges apply the two covenants, but what I said is that only a very small number of judges use it, and most of the numbers doesn't mean that a lot of judges use it, but because attorneys and prosecutors raise them, so judges use them. And from December 2009 and January 2019, there are about 2,195 cases that involve the two covenants. So there are 900, 700, 100, and 100 more at the different levels of courts or at administrative courts. So different courts apply or mention the two covenants. It sounds a lot. However, do you know how many judgments we have a year in Taiwan?
This question yesterday, that it's not enough just to tell us that the covenant is being cited without telling us how, in what context. But here, we're confined to the issue of the death penalty. So this is what I want to know is how relevant is it to the judicial debates about whether or not the death penalty should be imposed?
Thank you. I'm Lin Ciwei from TAEDP. I can respond to this question because our alliance has studied more than 10 years of the two covenants of their application on death penalty. Yesterday, the government representatives did mention the numbers of cases which apply the two covenants, and some of the data is on the website. That's true. However, I have to point out that to apply or not is not really the point. The point is how to apply the two covenants. It's not a yes or no question. It's about how the two covenants are applied. From the second review to now, there were two finalized death sentences. And in both cases, the judges said that their sentence are in compliance with the two covenants. And in this year, in the fourth month, there have been 3 new death sentences. Of course, those cases are still being appealed. But in those 3 cases, the judges also say that their sentences are in compliance with the two covenants. So if one country says that they are in full compliance with the two covenants but still give the 3 new death sentences, I don't think it's realization of the two covenants. And in the past several years, indeed, courts use the two covenants more and more. I'm not going to deny the positive progress. And I think the most serious part is in the prosecutor's office. Let me give you an example. In July last year, there was a case which was given death sentence for many times. The case was reversed at the Supreme Court to become a permanent imprisonment. But the prosecutor general raised extraordinary appeal to this permanent imprisonment. The general prosecutor wished that case to be a death sentence case, even though the Supreme Court already reversed that. So from that case, I think you can tell whether or not these governments understand the spirit of the two covenants. So we have to understand that the judicial side and the Ministry of Justice, these are the two sides, and they have different understanding of the two covenants. And I really wish that in your concluding observations this time, you may include the following recommendations. That is, if the court's judgments are in violation of the two covenants, then this should be a cause for retrial. To have such a clear rule so that judges and prosecutors know that their prosecutions and their judgment shall not violate the two covenants, because if there are such violations, then those cases must be retrialed. So I see in that case, we will see more concrete effect of the two covenants. Or, like I said, in the first 4 months, there have been 3 new cases that received death sentences already. Thank you. I will end here.
Yeah, please. So, there's one and then I give you. Yes?
I have the floor.
Please.
Okay, thank you very much. I haven't got the information, I think, from a previous visit to Taiwan that the Supreme Court is a huge institution with about 100 judges or something like that, and working in sections of 3 or 5 judges. It's evident, if this is correct, that there's a risk of conflicting jurisprudence within the court. And my question is, if this is so, is that relevant to application of the death sentence? And if so, is anything done in order to try to get a certain harmony in the jurisprudence? If you could elucidate that a little.
Thank you for the question. In Taiwan's judicial system, from district court, higher court to Supreme Court, there are 3 levels. Right now, at the district court and higher court, the interpretations may be quite inconsistent, but in the end, all death sentence cases will go up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court can interpret the 2 covenants and express their interpretations through their decisions. And to us, it's ridiculous. Many of them cited the 2 covenants at the district court and higher courts to support the use of death penalty. But fortunately, the Supreme Court, when suspecting some problems in the lower court's decisions, the Supreme Court can order a retrial or remand it back to the lower court.
Afternoon, I began by saying that there had been a dramatic decline in the use of the death penalty. Was that incorrect?
I think you are right. Because my colleague just said, this year, there are still instances in the district court level where death sentences were given. But throughout the past 2 years, we didn't have any executions or finalized death sentences. And in some cases, the prosecutor asked for death penalty, but in the end, the judgment did not agree to have death penalty.
Phenomenon then that I pointed out how at the time of the first and second review, the rate of execution in the previous years was much higher than it is today. So how do you explain that?
I think there's one important factor. In December 2012, the Supreme Court in Taiwan began to allow oral arguments in relation to death penalty. As a result, many NGOs began to provide their support in such oral arguments. As a result, you can see more reference to the covenants in these oral arguments. Of course, in the Supreme Court's decisions, as there's more reference to the 2 covenants, it's increasingly difficult to allow the imposition of death penalty. But this is because of the hard work by the private sector. So I believe that is the reason behind the progress. I think my colleague talked about the judgment resulting in death penalty. Of course, this collaboration between lawyers and NGOs work. On the other hand, in terms of the reduction in the number of executions of death penalty, the MOJ kept saying that they would assess if there's are grounds for retrial, extraordinary appeal, or mental disorder. And my alliance has been working with defense lawyers, defense attorneys, to see if there are grounds for retrial or extraordinary appeal. So I would not say the MOJ is working hard toward abolishing the death penalty. Rather, it's because these death row prisoners do have grounds for the death penalty not to be carried out. In 2018, actually, we did see executions.
And I'm from Amnesty International, and my comment does not represent Amnesty International. My next comment does not represent Amnesty International, just because I'm also on the board of Taiwan Alliance to End Death Penalty. And I think they are being very kind for not saying what I'm about to say, is because when every time we see a serious case happening like that's being widespread on media, death penalty, TAEDP will start forming a lawyers group. They will assign 3 lawyers to work on that case, to prepare for trial, to prepare for the court, to prepare all the case details. So they go into the court prepared for all these possible cases that might get sentenced to death. So we nip it in the bud, or should I say that? They started preventing cases from getting the death penalty from the very, very early stages. That's what I think is the crucial step that Taiwan's death penalty verdict has dropped in the recent years. Thank you very much.
So I think it is regrettable that many issues and aspects of Taiwan have violated the spirit of the International Covenant on on the Human Rights. And from the second session of ICCPR this morning to the third session of ICCPR in the afternoon, just like what we have saw. The issues of concern to the International Committee were limited to a few narrow aspects. For example, we spent a lot of time, the International Committee members spent a lot of time in the morning discussing the issues of aborigines and gender equality. And the issues related to the legal and taxation system weren't at all concerned by the International Committee. So this makes me wonder if it is Taiwanese government has covered up some facts when communicating with the International Committee members, especially they covered up the unfair, the unjust tax system, tax and legal system that occurred, that really is a serious issue happens in Taiwan, which has resulted in 14.31 million cases of unpaid tax and fee enforcement. And this is really a seriousness of the tax disaster, which has infringed on the most basic property rights and even the right to live of all the Taiwanese people. So I would like to call on the International Committee members to take a look at the core and the most urgent reform issues in Taiwan. Yeah, that is the unjust tax and legal system. So now we know that the protesters of the volunteers of the Tax and Legal Reform League and Action Alliance Redress to Redress 1219 are now outside of the conference area that they held the Two Covenants conference. So let's take a look at the live stream. So we can see it is still raining now, and the young volunteer is now appealing about So I think the sound is a bit unclear now. I think she is now talking about another tax victim because she said that the court has revoked a case. Okay, so she said that the two covenants protected the rights of the people to get relief, especially a lot of tax cases are seriously a violation of people's rights to live. And she said that none of the public servants tries to stand in front of the people, to face the people, and to face their mistakes. Yeah, she said that none of the public servant tries to face their mistakes. So today's appeal is to save human rights and to protect taxpayers' rights and the justice of taxpayers. And now tax and legal truly reform Taiwan, go, go, go. So she is now talking about the ICCPR protests, including the liberty of rights, including the property of rights of the people. However, the tax authorities in Taiwan, they issued wrongful tax bills without investigating, and the tax agency will illegally cooperate with the enforcement agency to issue the illegal tax bill, and the enforcement agency will enforce people's property, to seize people's property illegally too. And so this is the part of the unjust tax system, tax and legal system, that is seriously happening in Taiwan. And so now we want human rights. We want justice. So now this is another youth volunteer talking about, again, the National Tax Bureau, they issued wrongful tax bill, illegal tax bill. So there's a people who received a tax bill worth 4,000 Taiwanese dollars in 2017. She said that it is the period of the Taiwanese people to pay their taxes, which is in the May. So she is now talking about a case who received an unreasonable tax bill. And the ridiculous thing is that the tax authority said that the people should provide to prove that this tax bill is not reasonable by themselves. But actually, this should be provided by the government who issued the tax bill, because while they issue a tax bill, it is important to investigate carefully, but they didn't. And so this caused a lot of serious human rights violation cases in Taiwan. And now we, the volunteers, stand in front of the area in the conference place. We have the right to express, we have the right to talk, to appeal our sound, appeal to the government. So she stand out because she wants to call upon the help, call upon for the human rights for herself, because she just graduated. But now the unjust tax and legal system is not only a serious issue about tax or legal, but this also caused a lot of a weird situation, weird circumstances in Taiwan, such as Taiwanese actually have a low salary now. And why? Because the Tax Bureau, they always illegally issue tax bills. And so a lot of companies here, or a lot of foreign companies, can't stand with this illegal tax officer, this illegal act. And so they chose to leave Taiwan, and this is one of the reasons which caused the low salary now in Taiwan. And now she said that we, the people, have to work for our rights by ourselves. We have to stand up for ourselves to protect, to improve human rights in Taiwan, and to request for the public servants to really care about human rights, and to protect the future of our next generation, because this unjust tax systems. Okay, so we must protect the two covenants. We want our rights and human rights back. And now we want tax and legal reform, truly reform, and we want conscience to save Taiwan. So we want to thank you, every volunteers who stand up with us under the rain, under the sun, because we want to let the government to understand the determination of us of we the people. As long as the Tax and Legal Reform League is still continuing helping Taiwan, everyone, every Taiwanese, don't be afraid. We will stand with every Taiwanese to help to protect every one of us human rights. So today, our act, we went to the to the legislative yuan to tell the legislators that the covenant committee members came to Taiwan, and Taiwan has already implemented the two covenants for like 12 to 13 years. But yesterday in the two covenants conference in the panel, none of the legislators attend the conference. And this is actually a really ridiculous act. Because this is responsible for the legislators to consider, to really care about the two covenants implement in Taiwan. And he is now talking about there are 306 legislators who promised to stand with the people, to call upon, to help the people to protect their human rights. So they went to the legislative yuan to appeal that the legislators should be responsible to care about not only the implementation of the two covenants, but also redress. All must care about the redress of all fake cases in Taiwan. And we, the people, we request for the government to talk with the people to really care about the spirit of the two covenants. But today, none. So they not only went to the legislative yuan today for their protest, but they also went to the 5 yuans, including control yuan, including the legislative yuan, including so he said that while the people is standing in front of the yuans, the government, the public servants never come out, never truly face the people, face the people's voice. So we are now standing here because we are now, this is our right of our freedom of speech. This is our right to protest, especially this protest is about to call upon the abolish of illegal tax bill, or to so he is now talking about the okay, so they are now in front of the National Taxation Bureau. Oh, he said that today the reason that they stand in front of the National Taxation Bureau is because that they want to call upon the government to really listen to the people. As a public servant, your responsibility is to help the people, is to help the people, not to issue illegal tax bill and to illegally cooperate with the enforcement agency to seize the people's property. This is illegal. This is ridiculous. And so this is a really shameful thing in front of the international community. So now let's go back to the live stream of the two covenants panel. Okay, so let's take a look.
Is because their concerns are political and social instead of human rights. Social human rights shouldn't be approached from the political aspect. We should go ahead to do what should be done. So as the alliance mentioned, maybe government officials believe that they are in compliance with the two covenants. I think there should be a mechanism to examine whether or not government practices are in line with the two covenants. And I want to know if later on we're going to discuss torture, because I want to know whether I will have the opportunity to raise my point about torture and other issues.
I think we are finishing the death penalty, but I think you have still a question.
One more question about
Yes.
the death penalty. Is it accurate to say that the Minister of Justice could, in practice, impose a moratorium on the death penalty?
I'm sorry, would you please repeat?
Correct to say that the Minister of Justice could, as a practical matter, impose a moratorium by simply declining to authorize executions? Yeah. Okay. And could the President do that too, or does a pardon imply a full pardon? Or could the President's right to pardon also be a partial pardon in the sense that the President could stop the death penalty but allow for detention? In other words, could the President also impose a moratorium?
Yes, and according to Ministry of Justice, before they carry out execution, they have to call the President to ask whether or not she grants the prisoner a pardon. But
If the President said, I grant the pardon, does that mean the prisoner gets out of jail free?
yes,
Okay, so that's not the same as a moratorium on the death penalty.
but she can keep on saying no. But the thing is, we do not have a clear procedure regarding application for pardon. It's unknown. We do not know why she rejected. We do not know whether or not she accepted the application. We do not know whether or not she officially denies the application. There's no official document whatsoever. We can only hear from MOJ saying that they did call the presidential's office. We do not know who they talked to. We do not know whether or not they talked to the president directly. We do not know whether or not she gave the answer yes or no personally. So we would like to suggest the government to have a clear procedure regarding pardon applications.
Should not the procedure be that the President must consider giving a pardon? Should that not, wouldn't it be better to say that there should just be, the procedure should be that the President has to address the issue of whether or not to grant the pardon? Because as you said, in practice, the execution can't go ahead without the President's approval.
是，对，没错，刚。
Right. I think what you describe is exactly the problem. Among the 38 death row inmates, 35 had applied for pardon to the president, but the president didn't respond. So the president didn't say that she's going to accept or whether she's going to deny. So these 35 death row inmates had will file a lawsuit against the president because her lack of response is illegal. And the president sent out attorneys to say that the president or the presidential office doesn't have to provide a response. So as you described, right, in Taiwan, there isn't a clear procedure legally. But as other colleagues of mine said, in practice, the president did pardon some of the inmates.
Well, if the president believes that commutions or pardon can be granted as a means to introduce a moratorium, maybe we can learn from Mongolia. Before the abolition in Mongolia realized they actually used this particular method, the MOJ can also refuse to sign off on the execution order of death penalty as long as they have the political will. My alliance also included in our written document our specific recommendations.
It was the president who issued the moratorium before they abolished it. It was just the president by himself. But who can actually commute a death sentence? Is that also the president? And can she then decide you get 10 years in prison or 20 years or lifelong? Or doesn't it have to go to the judiciary? Please.
Well, there is a Pardon Act which says that the president is entitled to order the executive yuan to order the Ministry of Justice to consider pardon or reduction in sentences. So it is actually her right to have this order. It's in the Pardon Act.
But I mean, if she grants pardon, the person needs to be released.
Yes.
If she grants commutation, then she orders the government to whatever, to bring the case again to the judges, or
I don't think she can order a retrial.
So who is then deciding in the commutation what prison sentence the person then has to serve? Yeah?
I have one practical question. Before the executions, who is the one who have the last say? Because like in Indonesia, before the executions, it is the president who signed the paper, who authorized the execution. So who is doing it here, president or minister?
It's the Minister of Justice.
Minister of Justice.
Okay.
And also the case will also bring to Chen Mingtang, who was sitting here. So he did review all the execution since 2013.
Okay.
But we still need an answer.
Yeah. Okay.
Is it in the Pardon Act?
So it is only the pardon that is in the hand of the president, but executions is in the hand of the minister.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Commutation we still find.
Yeah, we are still looking up the details regarding commutation, and Tzu has the answer now.
In terms of commutations, in addition to the Pardon Act, there are other provisions in the Constitution. Article 40 of our Constitution, the President of the country, per laws, can grant pardons. However, in accordance of laws and regulations, that's the prerequisite. As for the Minister of Justice, in the Criminal Code procedures, in the Code of Criminal Procedures, the leader of the judicial
As we can see the ongoing panel in the third session of ICCPR in the afternoon, the issues of concern to the International Committee's members were all limited to a few narrow issues. Just like what we saw, they spent almost the entire hour to discuss about the abolition of the death penalty. Issues related to the tax system were not at all on the minds of the International Committee members, which means every one of us who now suffers an unjust tax and illegal system, our human rights are worse than the death row. So I would like to call upon to the committee members to really care about the most serious issue occurring in Taiwan and what all of the volunteers are speaking about outside the area. So next we can see what the volunteers are talking about.
Ceremony of the 2017 Taipei University. The accused president and three former presidents of Taiwan, six vice presidents, and the other leaders from different walks of life and different countries have highly praised Tai Ji Men for promoting love and peace through cultural exchange. The behaviors of the National Taxation Bureau and the Administrative Enforcement Agency is a failure to protect the people's rights to participate in social life as protected by Article 15. So what's about the two minutes is about human rights. So our country has, our government, our officials have violated so many things in the 2 minutes. And really, so we people are standing on the streets to call for help. And we really wish through our constantly taking to the streets, we could one day wait so the government truly practice the transitional justice they promised to us, especially our president's time. And at last, protect our human rights so that we can see our future. Thank you.
Hello everyone, hello all the volunteers and the policemen. The human rights is a basic we have. This is a priority in our life. I will tell you a reality happening in Taiwan. So the officials make a perfect and a beautiful report using Taiwanese money. However, in reality, there are a lot of abusions. There is a graphic in the report. I'll show you now from my cell phone.
说，在他主保护行政执行的绩效。
So this graphic is about the Ministry of Finance, the credits they earn after they take people's tax bills. They take away people's. So thank you for all the volunteers. We'll now go back inside to the forum.
The English translation of the press release of the Taoyuan District Court. So for your reference.
That would be kind. Thank you very much. Yeah. Now I think we have to go to the torture issues. Please.
So what I'm trying to say is, I'm really grateful to your attention and concern about the death penalty. But I think the issue I'm going to talk about has even far-reaching effects, because your property, your everything may be lost, not to mention the impact can last for decades. That is tax victims. Real cruelty or torture may not be confined to prisons or confined to a number of torturers. I think the worst form of torture is the government's bully of people, and such bully can have long-lasting effects. When you discussed with the government representatives, I don't think you get the full picture, because there are so many cases of such tax victims. If free press is respected in our country, please take a look at this. This is a woman in her 60s holding this placard on the roadside, and she was arrested by the police. Why? Because the placard she's holding was supporting one particular case, which has been ongoing for 26 years. So for this woman, she is a tax victim. This is torture to her. I think she leads a miserable life, sometimes even worse than the death row prisoner, because the death row prisoner can seek remedy in the form of retrial or extraordinary appeal. But this woman's property was auctioned by the tax authorities. And the retrial period, according to the administrative court, is only 5 years. So 5 years on, she would have no means to seek remedy. This is the enforcement agency under the MOJ. When these organizations' land was auctioned by the agency, you can see before the enforcement action took place, 6 months before that, in the internal documents in the taxation authority, the officials were talking about how they could divide up the bonuses they would receive if they completed that particular auction. So this woman was arrested, and she was interrogated for 6 hours. And then she was transferred to the district prosecutor's office. And she also faced restrictions on her freedom of travel for the subsequent 6 months. You can see this is torture, mental and physical. And this torture has been ongoing for 26 years. And now this woman has been admitted to hospital because she suffers from PTSD. So taxation, I have to say, in addition to death penalty, the death penalty meted out by the tax authority on some taxpayers is equally unbearable. And this is a case of injustice, but there's no solution. You can see judgments made in 6 years. 5 out of the 6 years, the judgments said that there's no taxation owed to the taxation authority. However, there's still 1 year's tax statement that was held valid. As a result, the Tai Ji Men disciples didn't have a chance to seek remedy. So I believe the tax authority, the Ministry of Finance should be held accountable. Even when the court ruling is obtained, there should be some means for these tax victims to seek remedy. Otherwise, these people will never see justice prevail to their favor. Thank you.
Please.
Dear committee members, hi, I am Pan Tianqing. I'm from the Taiwan Alliance to Promote Civil Partnership Rights, and I want to talk about gender-based discrimination, which is a form of torture. And I want to point out that the response to your first LOI has a mistake. Well, that's a wrong response from the government. For example, forced surgery before changing one's sex. So when the government responded to your first LOI in paragraph 36, what they said is misleading and wrong. The government, in fact, does not implement the point 72 in 2017 COR. In Taiwan, transgender people in Taiwan still need to go through surgeries to remove their sex glands before they can change their sex registration. And the government says that Ministry of Health and Welfare doesn't have such a restriction. But in fact, it is the Ministry of Interior that has such a restriction or requirement. So according to the administrative interpretation in 2008 from the Ministry of Interior, transgender people still need to go through surgeries before they can change their gender, and that has not changed at all since 2017. And under such circumstances, transgender persons were not able to change their legal gender based on economic, health, or personal reasons when being arrested in criminal cases, put in a cell, detained, or jail, will be categorized and treated based on their sex assigned at birth and face criminal treatment which is not aligned with their identified gender. And our alliance urges you to provide a recommendation and ask the government to immediately abolish the policy of forcing transgender persons to undergo surgeries before they can register their legal gender, and to correct the measures that result in transgender citizens being incarcerated in prisons that are not aligned with their gender identity. We consider the existing measures are equivalent to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. It infringes upon the rights of the transgender people and their right to health. Thank you.
Coming again to this reading out of statements in a speed that interpreters cannot follow. I think we have these written documents anyway, so I think there's no need that you read that out again to us. I think you were before asking for the floor. Is it also a written statement that you are reading out, or is it related to what?
I would like to.
Is it related to the topic we are discussing?
I would like to draw attention to the principle of non-refoulement and for the undocumented migrants. So yes, this is related to Article 7 and 8 to 10.
Yeah.
Should I continue?
I'm just thinking, would you be here tomorrow as well? Because we are dealing with the non-refoulement in relation to migrants under Article 13 tomorrow, or if it is very quick, then we can still do it now.
I'll do it quick, okay?
Yeah? Okay.
Because in the previous the second conclusions and observations in 2017, you have recommended our country to enact a refugee law, but we still list virtually no progress of institutionalizing a mechanism of refugee protection in Taiwan, and because of that, there's virtually no value for the asylum seekers to establish that to bring evidence to claim a principle of non-refoulement. So irrespective of the increase of asylum seekers in Taiwan, the government refused to enact any statutory codifications, and there's only ad hoc administrative actions. So there will be like in rare cases, the government will agree to let the refugees stay without any formal status, but because of that, they cannot attain any working permit. And occasionally, show the government acknowledges that they come from a country that's under a more grave crisis. They will agree that they will make a monthly evaluation and to extend their stay on a monthly basis. But there's still no institutional protection and review for asylum seekers. We have forwarded Ethiopians, Tigrayans, Yemenis to the immigration agency, but they dismissed our cases, and they also did not bother to get in touch with the asylum seekers themselves. So our recommendation will be to establish a national Refugee Protection Act, and in the interim, we can amend the Employment Service Act and the Immigration Act so that they can have apply for relief for deportation, and they can gain legal work in the interim.
As I said, this is the subject for tomorrow, refugee, and that is Article 13. And for migrant workers also in the other committee, they are dealing with the right to work and also the conditions of migrant workers. But thank you for having made this statement. I actually wanted, again, more, but now the time is already very late, what we discussed actually with the government today, whether there is anything you would like still to add in order to assist us in forming and formulating our recommendations, please.
Thank you. I have something to add about the juvenile detention house.
Yes.
Okay. It is set up for children who are involved in or suspected of criminal cases, and they are put into the juvenile detention house for further assessment as to what kind of protection they need, and they are there for temporary protection up to several months. But actually, the juvenile detention house is set up under the legal basis for it is Juvenile Justice Act. And therefore, the juvenile detention house actually is managed, and the living conditions are that of a prison. And they have very limited access to social workers or psychologists, and actually many of them have been bullied by elder residents there. So I think the juvenile detention house, because it houses juveniles who are themselves victims of negligence or domestic violence, extra care is necessary. So I would recommend that the committee ask more questions about the setup of the juvenile detention house. Thank you.
But they have two different functions. So on the one hand, and that can start with 12 years, that if they are suspected of having done something wrong, they will be assessed there and they can be there, although they are not yet under the age of criminal responsibility.
Yes.
And then it is for those who are above 14, who are suspected of having committed a crime, in order for pre-trial detention.
Right.
But as soon as they are then brought before a court, and the court is sentencing them, then they are brought to the
correction schools.
To the correction schools.
Yes.
Yeah. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So
there are two.
It's particularly problematic for the ones who are between 12 and 14, so that they are for their own protection.
They are over 12, but not necessarily under 14, because
okay.
Yeah. So it is a temporary housing facility, which is managed like a prison.
And should our recommendation not be that that is something for the social welfare system?
Yes.
Yes.
Excuse me.
You have to turn it on.
Please ask the audience to turn off their mic if they're not speaking.
Yeah, whoever is not speaking, please turn off.
Can I ask a quick question on juvenile justice and youngsters who are confined to go through that justice system? Is there? I want to understand the gender dimensions of this justice program. Are there both girls and boys who go through the system, and is there a difference in the way they are handled? Are they put in different houses? And what are the particular challenges for young girls? Because in many countries, mine included, young girls, very young girls, hardly reach age of, they are 14, 15 years, have become pregnant and have done damage to the newborn baby because they cannot handle it, because they're just 13, 14 years. Do you have, what kind of offenses, in other words? Is there a difference in the offenses that male juveniles commit and female juveniles commit, and is there particular sensitivity in handling these differences?
Well, I can answer the simple one, which is that in prisons and in the detention houses, they have separate housing. Yeah. So that is one thing. But I would say that they are managed quite in the same way. And I am not knowledgeable enough to answer the second part of the question, which is that whether they get different treatment in terms of sentencing.
Not different treatment, but sensitivity according to the offense, and some consideration given to mitigating circumstances, which maybe they're present because of the reproductive functions of young girls and so on. Is there any difference?
I know just one case who is around 16 or 17 years old when she got pregnant, and there was a case of infanticide. And she was sentenced to, I guess, 20 or more years. So now she's in the correction school.
20 years?
Or more, I don't recall, maybe 25.
I have a question to our interpreters. First of all, my apology, because we are already 20 minutes over time. My question is, could we still go on for 5 to maximum 10 minutes?
Yes.
Much. I'm really very much appreciate it, and I'm really sorry that we're abusing your time. So really now let's focus on really the most important issues, otherwise we can take them also up tomorrow. I think you have been asking for the floor for some time.
我是民间司法。
I'm from the Judicial Reform Foundation. I already submit our written statement, and there is an external inspection team that is independent of prisons to inspect the condition in the prison, but it's not operating very well. I'm not going to repeat what I said in my written submission. I only want to mention that when committee members ask MOJ whether or not there are cases of torture, MOJ representatives only talk about cases that involve deaths, but that is wrong. In paragraph 14 to the second LOI, they say that after July 2020, the Judges Act was amended so that prosecutors' misbehavior can be disciplined. However, as of now, after these amendments becomes effective, no case was established to really assess the performance of the prosecutors. I think there was only one case, and in that case, the prosecutors interview the defendant illegally and force confession. And in the prosecutor's assessment committee, the result of that assessment is that his or her salary should be deducted, but this prosecutor can still remain on the position. So torture still exists. And the current monitoring mechanism in Taiwan is not very effective.
Thank you very much. That fully confirms. Is it again about the taxpayers?
Last time. Yes. No. It's about the 酷刑.
It's about torture. Torture, I think the reviewers may have overlooked an important issue. Some people may not consider this to be a case of torture. In the previous session, you talk about having prosecutors investigating prosecutors or police officers investigating police officers. I think this can constitute a torture case. I think the Investigation Bureau under the MOJ and the prosecutor's office are responsible for initiating investigations. But you see, after the investigation into tax cases, the enforcement agency under the MOJ will be responsible for carrying out the penalty. In the process, human rights may once again be infringed upon. Death penalty or torture, of course, exists for some people to remove or eliminate people they dislike. But the tax authority has a different system to eliminate people they dislike through abusive taxation. So this, again, is a very big structure.
Dealt with that, I think, already. I mean, quite often we have all kind of written statements about the tax.
是很抱歉，那我不知道说，那如果这样子的问。
So I would like to know, for this kind of issue, which clusters will be the right occasion for me to raise the issue? Because I don't think the Ministry of Finance has any representatives in the delegation. So I hope that the review committee can help us either in terms of death penalty, torture, tax victims can also be included.
2013 and in 2017 and now again. And there is no right taxation that is in an arbitrary manner is a violation of the right to property. But the right to property doesn't exist in the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. And that's why it was always again brought in under the torture, but it has nothing to do with torture. I'm sorry for that. That is simply not covered by the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights. There might be some issues under the Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, but I think it doesn't really fit into the rights with which we are dealing with. And I fully understand the case. I know it already since 2013, and I have discussed it very, very long and often with different people. But I think we cannot really.
可是我们非常的无助，我们有多少个
We are so helpless. How many 25 years do we have in our lives?
Or review the obligations of the government in relation to the Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and there is no right to be exempted from taxation.
那我想请问各位委员，就是
Can I ask, so are there any means for us to seek remedy, either from the ICCPR or ICESCR, or there should be other avenues through which I can seek relief or remedies? I think taxation should be considered integral part of human rights.
It's not part of our mandate. I'm really sorry. Those are tax courts, and if before the tax courts there's an unfair proceedings that might be under Article 14, but I think again what we have discussed the last time, it was not really falling under that. Are there any other issues? Because I think we have been already very much overstretching the very nice attitude of our interpreters. So again, many thanks to the interpreters for having worked half an hour longer, and I hope that tomorrow we will be more in time, and also very often working when you are reading out statements very, very quickly. So thank you very much, and to you again, many thanks for the discussions we have had. Many issues were for us extremely important to understand better the situation, and we will take care of them in our concluding observations. Yeah? Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And have a nice evening. Please.
谢谢各位今天的与会，今日的会议到此结束。
So in the conference, we can see that the covenants, the committees mentioned that the law related to the taxation bills is not related to the two covenants. But what the committee said about this is wrong, because it is actually what is covered and what is in the two covenants. And also to call for the Ms. Huang's case about what one of the men mentioned in the forum. So about the Ms. Huang's case is on 2020 on September 19th, and she is a volunteer of the Fight for Fair Tax Reform. Also, she is a 60-year-old mother named Ms. Huang, and she also only carried a board on the vacant lot in the North Hsinchu in Taiwan, and she carried this board as to express her desire. And when she stood on the road with a sign and was surrounded by more than 10 police officers. And then, after surrounded by the police officers, she was illegally interrogated and arrested without being told about the name of the crime. So then she was taken to the police station to interrogate for more than 6 hours until late at night. So because she was just going to the lot for only carrying a board, but she cannot know that she will face so many problems. So she fainted and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorders. However, the committee didn't reply about this. Is also very important regarding the evasion of the freedom of expression, and also this is a penalty of the cruel, and it is also a violation of the two covenants. So I really call for the committees, and also once again ask for the committee to give us solicit feedbacks. And what we mentioned about the Ms. Huang's case, later we will utilize a movie to immediately recreate the scenario of that day. And we can watch this video and we can observe what actually happened to Ms. Huang that day on September 19th, 2020.
Okay, so just like Claire mentioned, the case that she just mentioned is actually the board that the volunteer in the third ICCPR session he held on his hand. This is actually about the Mrs. Huang, and then now we would like to ask for the help to. Okay, now let's take a look at this video.
If we still don't respond on your third try, you can bang the table.
If you're not a resident here, go away!
No, I live nearby.
You still need to leave. I don't know who you are, but I can detain you. I'm not cooperating with you. It's her I wanted.
My colleague.
Now we are by the roadside. There are so many cops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 cops. Why?
Here comes another one.
Right, here comes another one. We are by the roadside. Why are there so many cops? Why? What on earth is happening now? You can get a little closer. Come on.
Film me. I'm a good citizen. He wanted to check my ID.
Let's see what he is holding. Why was he stopped by the police? What is he holding in his hands?
I'm just holding this.
Film this.
Did we violate any of
But
their
I'm
rights?
scared.
What rights of yours am I violating?
Scared.
What rights of yours am I violating?
We're not breaking any laws here. We violated any laws?
Then we'll choose an older one. No, I have to look around once to find out.
I'm afraid you're gathering for a fight.
We didn't gather people to fight.
Then good.
Then tell us when we break the law, or you can raise a warning sign. When we see that warning sign, we will ask what law we are breaking at that point. Is that okay?
Just identify yourself, and you will be done after that.
It's quiet man.
According to the Police Power Exercise Act,
I
have to interrogate you.
She's going to interrogate the
Don't take
people.
photos of my face. You can take photos of the scene.
I
don't have my ID with me. You can take a photo of my armband, but you are not allowed to take photos of my face.
All right, slow down.
我们现在把至少我们先收证好，我们先收。Always your voice. 好，我们没有大声的。好，我们先来听这个，我们在直播。好。 I'm checking your ID now. You don't have the authority to take you back to the police.
This officer is so rude and mean.
We are performing our duties according to the law. Please step aside.
I didn't.
You want to identify yourself or go to the police station with me? You want to identify yourself or follow me to the police station?
No, we need your ID.
I have a question.
Check your ID.
She's checking her identity.
Sir,
Live
ID.
broadcast. Live broadcast right away. We are live now.
You're affecting us performing our duties now.
We're not affecting
So
you.
interrogate whoever's recording.
现在在直播。 你现在怎么样？你现在影响到我们的执勤了。 我们没有影响啊。
That day, the police checked almost every volunteer there.
Let me inform you that I am acting in accordance with the Police Authority Enforcement Law, and that the entire personnel at this place is being interrogated. If you refuse, I will make you stay at the police station for 3 hours.
There is an
So there's an accuser. Oh,
So you're the representative now.
what is the complaint?
What is it now?
What is the complaint?
tell you. Are you related to the case?
Come on. We're dealing with this case now, okay? You, put your cell phone away. Don't video.
What is the charge placed by the
It's her right to
court?
press charge. She is within her rights. She can sue her for defamation. She can sue her for intimidation.
We didn't threaten anyone. We didn't even know where she was.
What is it?
But this is her right.
I'll tell you the charges against you during the interrogation later, okay? I'll tell you when I arrest you in a moment. Don't worry.
Take her.
没有搜索令的情况下，未经
Without a search warrant, or the consent of the owner, the police searched the bag on the ground. It did not belong to Ms. Wang.
This one. Did you hold this? Yeah? Is it this one? Did you hold it? Huh?
Finally, after looking for the poster, the police forcefully stuffed the poster into Ms. Wang's hands and arrested her without
并未
charging her
告
with
知
the
任何
crime.
罪名，以现行犯名义将他逮捕至6家派出所。
I was inside the building. They told me I didn't need to sign. They just took my mom away. They told me to come out from the front door. And they dragged my mom away from the side door. I didn't even know. They lied to me.
Why did you take her away?
Why did you do this to a 60-year-old
Did you let her sign her name?
Why did you let Arthurs take her
How
away?
could you treat a senior like this?
Oh, my brain's almost right now. I was surrounded by a group of police officers. Very scary.
It was such a minor case, yet Miss Huang ended up going to the ER. How could you abuse your power to such an extent? Never before was anyone in Taiwan or in the world accused of defamation for holding a sign. Under Article 310, how could you abuse your power? You are turning the nation into a police state. How dare you?
I am Jie Boxian. I'm the head of the Zhubei branch here, so I'm speaking out and I accept the consequences. What is our problem? You cannot just go into someone's home. I just want to say that Taiwan is a democracy ruled by law. You cannot go to someone's house and hold a sign with a name. I said it again. You cannot go to someone's house. We would like the audience to see this. We are just standing by the roadside, yet there are so many cops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9 cops. You can't go to someone's house.
On September 20th, the day after the incident, Chief Xie Boxian from Zhubei branch held a press conference and issued a press release in an attempt to smear the volunteer, Ms. Huang, as a rebel. This clearly violated the administrative principle of law enforcement neutrality and seriously damaged the image of the police. On September 21st, the Administrative Enforcement Agency attempted to rationalize the illegal police arrest by issuing a press release claiming that when the enforcement officer arrived at work, the volunteers glared, abused, and even slapped the windows of her car, encircling the official car and obstructing the passage. Li Guifen, the chief enforcement officer of the Tai Ji Men case, was terrified. But was this true? A video footage from the scene helped restore the truth of the incident. This video was shot in front of the mechanical parking lot of the Hsinchu branch of the enforcement agency. At the time, Li Guifen's car was waiting for the parking lot's gate to open, and it was not being blocked by volunteers of the Tax and Legal Reform League, who, according to the video, did not slap the car windows or perform any other forcible actions.
Then on September 9th, he went to the parking lot of his branch office building. And when the enforcement officer was about to enter the building, he slapped her car. That video, I really can't see clearly whether they're slapping or not. I didn't see it. Just surrounded by 7 people. I didn't see anyone slapping the vehicle. But the press release from the enforcement agency of the Ministry of Justice did mention that.
If someone reports a crime today, well, the police do whatever the person says, regardless of whether it is true or false. She claimed that her car window was slapped and that she was persecuted. A video must be presented to prove it. Wouldn't you watch such a video? Just because she is an enforcement officer, so there's no need to verify it? Is this special treatment? Anyone who reports a crime must have proof, and that video contains nothing to support her claim. Our police officers' biggest mistake is that they just handle the case according to what the enforcement officers say, thinking it would be the enforcement officer's fault if it is incorrect. It has absolutely nothing to do with me. How could the police handle cases if they are incapable of telling right from wrong? This is unacceptable. You didn't check whether what she said was true. Could the police arrest Mrs. Huang as a criminal? It is a very serious crime. Can't you arrest someone just randomly? The attitude of the police, their behavior, their interrogation, and their lack of understanding of the law. How can we continue to make the people of Hsinchu County feel safe? The police have the authority to verify the identity of people under Article 6 of the Police Power Access Act, and the police can only do so when people violate the 6 items listed under the Article 6. However, these people didn't violate any item of the article. The actions of the police obviously violate human rights. The policemen shouldn't break the law because they are aware of it. It is not like police officers with uniforms on can verify anyone's identity as they want. As you can see in the video, a police officer said, "I will interrogate whoever is video recording me. Is he legally allowed to do so?" Is that kind of an attitude a police officer should have? In this picture, he's pointing at a crowd. Look at his expressions. I don't know him, but I feel compelled to publicly criticize such conduct in this council meeting. I'm hopeful that Commissioner can take this issue seriously. I have questions for you. What crime did Mrs. Huang commit by holding a sign on that vacant lot? Why is holding such a sign illegal? I don't know what law she broke. Am I guilty by holding a sign?
On September 19, there were only a few Tax and Legal Reform League members on that empty lot, holding signs. In the end, Ms. Huang was sent to the prosecutor's office. She was detained till midnight and then sent to the ER. I look at this matter as a citizen, especially that video can be seen anywhere, on the internet. I'm sad to see it. These people were not armed with weapons. Did not seem to be mobsters, right? Why were they treated like this? I don't think it makes sense.
Then I would like to ask, has the Ms. Huang's case in Zhubei entered the judicial process? When did it enter the judicial process?
This case was filed on September 19th, and we sent her to the prosecutor's office for investigation in the early morning of the following day.
Since you sent her to the district prosecutor's office, the case has entered the judicial process, right?
Yes.
Okay, then I would like to ask who issued this news release. It says September 20th, issued by the precinct of Zhubei, Hsinchu County Police Bureau.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, now that this case has gone through the judicial process, how could the Zhubei branch issue such a press release? You stated that the legal process began on September 19th, so why did the police issue this press release on September 20th? This is a serious issue.
Regarding to this part about the enforcement agency on September 9th, I think it is more serious. Then on September 19th, you targeted Ms. Huang, which is the same as finding a scapegoat to take the blame.
The police think that someone called red-handed can be arrested, but is there any other principle that should be considered during the arrest? We know that in so many cases, it is eventually decided that, in fact, unless the matter was prosecuted swiftly, most people will make a complaint against the police. Most of them won their appeals, and there were many such examples.
You want something to eat? We really have a menu for you to choose from. We are nice to prisoners.
And wait for Professor Chen to come and put up a show. I am Xie Boxian. I am the head of the Zhubei branch here, so I am speaking out and I accept the consequences.
I believe the future government will be tolerant. If we don't hear you the first time, you can raise your voice. If we don't hear you the second time, you can raise your voice even more. If we don't respond the third time, you can bang the table.
This is about the Tai Ji Men case. Yeah, it has lasted for 24 years, but the land was still auctioned.
If we don't respond the third time, you can bang the table. If we don't respond the third time, you can bang the table.
Those cops overreacted.
We're performing our duties. No video, please.
But you're filming us.
Be humble. Be humble. And be more humble.
Okay, you can see from the scene that the scene is already dark and this group of volunteers already stood outside of the international panel for all day from day to night, attending many online and also like the volunteers actually meetings in the hope of getting the issue of taxation and human rights in Taiwan seen by the members inside the building, who is the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. But we can see that one of the members from the committee said that what was mentioned from the man about the Tai Ji Men case, it was just only a taxation issue. But actually it was not. It was totally a wrong thing, because it is not only a case of human rights violations, and it is also a political case due to a systematic crime. And also because the case has not only been vindicated because of the officials who made a mistake were not penalized. So when every time the officials to make a mistake, and they were not punished, and they were not being penalized, and they were always do the wrong thing, and the systematic crime will grow bigger and bigger, so that the people and the citizens from Taiwan cannot go away from this suffering, and we cannot go away from this again and again, and this is a systematic crime which the committee did not notice, and they still think that it is only a case of human rights. So next, Ling will show us what was about the Ministry of Finance and what they see about this thing.
Okay, so just as Claire mentioned, the Tai Ji Men case is a best example regarding the human rights persecution case that was falsely framed with a fake tax bill. So, although the Supreme Court had already ruled them not guilty and no tax evasion, and the National Taxation Bureau had also corrected the 5 years of the incorrect tax bill to 0. However, as the National Taxation Bureau concealed the evidence which caused the loss of the administrative lawsuit, there is still 1 year of the wrong tax bill left. So because of the 5-year limit for a retrial on the administrative litigation law, the Tai Ji Men disciples have no way to open a retrial to get relief. And so this is why Tai Ji Men's land was illegally enforced by the state at last, which seriously infringed on people's right to relief and also the most fundamental value of human rights. And so this is a severe structural issue that has harmed many people in Taiwan, just like the tax victims that we mentioned before. And so the most unacceptable thing is that today the organizer of the Two Covenants review meeting is actually the Ministry of Justice in Taiwan. But what we cannot accept is that this is the unit that persecutes human rights the most in Taiwan. And they persecute severely. So why did they persecute the most severely is because the Ministry of Justice is actually the authority, the direct authority of the National Taxation Bureau and the enforcement agency. And so these two authorities is the one we mentioned a lot of times that persecutes the human rights, persecutes the people the most. And there is another thing that we want to talk about is that the Ministry of Justice, who call upon the human rights, that they said that we want to protect the human rights of the Taiwanese. We want to protect the freedom, the democracy of the Taiwanese. But actually, they didn't. This is just a slogan for them to call upon for the international community. But we people cannot feel anything. We cannot feel the improvement of the human rights here in Taiwan now. And so this is really an ironic situation. So as we can see, the volunteers is now still protesting outside in front of the meeting area that they held the Two Covenants review panel. Yeah, and so this is really a tragedy. So let's keep take a look on the video on the live stream of what the international volunteer is now talking about.
So I really appreciate, at last, I really appreciate, and I would like to thank all of the volunteers in front of the building. And I would like to thank all of you sitting in front of the online video, seeing about all what's happening about the conference and what we're talking about to the government, and also not only to the government and to the international panel, we also want to call for to all of the citizens in Taiwan to care about our own rights and our own human rights, because maybe we will think that it is only about our money, our tax, but in reality, it will be related to every one of us and every one of us freedom and human rights. So at last, we will finish by giving you all of you a song about Tai Ji Men case, which is always mentioning in this video and in this online meeting. Through this Tai Ji Men case song, we would like to tell you that this is only a part of the abusion and only a part of the violation of the government from all the Taiwanese people. So while we're looking about this song and while seeing through this song, we need to think about our own us, that maybe one day we will be violated and maybe we'll be abused also from like the same way from the officials if we did not stand up. So now next we're going to listen to this video, and this is live music, so we can also sing about this. And thank you for you all, and thank you for your participation, and we're looking forward to you tomorrow. Thank you.
二官下台！二官下台！
Or any other charges.
In 2007, Tai Ji Men was found not guilty of tax evasion or any
All
other
right,
charges.
thank you all.
But now the government still rob the people of their property. Is it okay to raise a placard?
I don't know the details, but please don't. Look, so many people are watching. Let's talk in private.
Couldn't we get inside?
Why we citizens can't go to the cultural center?
Our land has been seized. What else can we do?
agree,
Our home was taken away. What would you do if your home was seized?
How could you hit him?
No one hit him.
Don't blame me.
Shouldn't you call 911?
This is unbelievable.
What are the coppers
Call
doing?
an ambulance. Call an ambulance. Why won't they call?
He fell himself.
No, he did not.
So you won't have him because he fell himself?
Don't blame me. Don't blame me.
You pushed him.
It's true. You pushed him. I saw it.
It stopped me when I was taking a walking class on 1914 Creative Park today just because I was wearing this t-shirt. I don't know why. You are being unreasonable because you are outnumbered us. He pushed me! He pushed me! Please tell me which law I broke.
We are following the special investigation order now.
Did you record it?
Go ahead and take
You
photos.
pressed your tummy against me again. Did you record it?
Go ahead and take photos.
You pressed your tummy against me again.
We need your cooperation.
Don't push me!
We need your cooperation, please. We need your cooperation, please.
We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right. We want taxpayers' right.
Slow down, slow down, slow down, stop.
True tax and legal reform. Save Taiwan with conscience. True tax and legal reform. Save Taiwan with conscience. Save Taiwan with conscience. True tax and legal reform. Save Taiwan with conscience. True tax and legal reform. Save Taiwan with conscience. Save Taiwan with conscience.